Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic Monday edition. A lot to get to. Glad you're with us across the Outkick Network. Hutton and Withrow here from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Dan Dakich will join us, host of Don't At Me here on the Outkick Network. He'll be with us in roughly 20 minutes. Scott Stallings finished tied for 26th at the 87th Masters. And he will join us on his way back from Augusta National. Can't wait for that conversation in hour number 2. After shot even par on the final round, had a solid showing on the first and third days of the tournament, and he's playing some great golf. We'll ask about all the conditions, the headlines, and more. Plus, speaking of headlines, Jim Williams made headlines last week with his comments as a media consultant and analyst to Dennis Dodd about the Pac-12, the media contract, and the distribution of the conference moving forward, specifically football, and the fact that he doesn't believe that 50% of their games will even reach television with this new deal. He's won multiple Emmys, and he knows what he's talking about. We'll dive into the details in hour number 3. Chad, good afternoon.
Pac-12 is going to go into these media meetings saying, just hear me out here. The return of radio. That's what we're going to be big on now. Half our games will be on radio only.
We'll travel our cruise.
It's all coming back. That's where it started. It's all going back to radio. That's where our games will live. And only half will actually be seen by eyeballs. The rest will be experienced through the ears. That's where the Pac-12 is headed. Hutton, I hope you had a great weekend.
Solid Easter weekend.
For me, too. Yep. Got a chance to watch some Masters, and
Same.
Good time. And that's obviously the big story of the weekend.
So the story going into the Augusta was PGA and LIV, and the fact they were being separated for the first 2 rounds as to not cause controversy. Greg Norman wasn't invited, even though he's a former Masters champion, because the Masters didn't want it to be about anything but the Masters. And then the final round happened. And I thought the PGA and its players have to be thrilled with the result. And LIV and the top of their golfing list with Koepka and Mickelson, they also have to feel really good about the results despite not winning. I thought it was the best of both considering all the conditions. And hats off to Jon Rahm. He wins for the 4th time on tour this calendar year, and he's one of 4 or 5 players to ever do it, picking up his 4th victory of the season by the time the Masters rolls around. He's playing great golf, and he does it through the different conditions of the weekend. Koepka had his 3rd round cut short, starts Sunday by finishing his 3rd round. By the time he finishes the 3rd round, he's only up by 2, and by the time they reached the 6th hole at Augusta National, Jon Rahm had tied for the lead, and then he took the lead and never looked back. And the only thing he did look back on was the leaderboard, where he saw Jordan Spieth and Phil Mickelson chasing him down, and he was steady throughout that final 9, the second 9 yesterday. I thought he was great, trailed the final round, but yet turned around to beat the player on the Sunday at the Masters. He wins his first green jacket. Meanwhile, Koepka, I thought, was really good for 56 holes, or 54 holes, excuse me. And considering that that's exactly when the tournament's in for LIV, that was fitting. That after 54 holes, that's where things really turned for Jon Rahm, who was the most consistent player. Mickelson was not able to catch Jon Rahm. And Spieth was back atop the leaderboard. There were shades of different eras and different personalities and themes and storylines. And oh, by the way, the players also win based on the increase of the purse. Now, it's not going to reach what we saw the LIV Tour hand out by any means on a tournament-by-tournament basis. But, Chad, Augusta National paid $3 million more in total than they did last year. The top 36 finishers left with a check of at least 6 figures. And while the LIV Tour handed Brooks Koepka a check for $4 million for winning in Orlando, we saw the Masters champion yesterday take home $3.4 million, I believe, of that said purse. It was I thought a win-win all the way around, except for the weather. And the weather played a huge factor in what we saw throughout the weekend.
Yeah, one quick correction, by the way. Greg Norman never won the Masters. He won 2 majors, and he lost. He lost fantastically one year at the Masters in '96, blowing it, but he won the Open Championship twice. So
yes, thank you. They held a press conference about that.
Yeah, I wonder if he's. He certainly wouldn't just get the invite, having not won. But I wonder if he bought a ticket, could he go, or is he banned? If he decided to go to the Masters, right? If he just went as a spectator.
Yeah, he could go as a spectator. But again, like they specifically mentioned, hey, Phil's here.
Yeah.
Where's Norman? And they said we didn't extend the invite. And they did say the last few times that they've invited him, he's only been twice over the last 8 or 9 years anyway. So they made that point. But like if Norman's the most hated player from the LIV Tour, Mickelson would be number 2. And he made a charge late. And Rahm didn't stutter throughout the back 9. I thought it was a show that Rahm is built for really any condition in any course.
Yeah, the story is Jon Rahm becoming the 4th Spaniard to win the Masters, and congratulations to him. Remarkable play on Sunday where he flipped, where he was down big and ends up winning going away. Down 4, wins by 4 strokes. Really remarkable by him. The LIV versus PGA thing, Phil Mickelson said afterwards that it was just nice to go and play golf. And for this tournament, Hutton, we previewed it last week. It was about the tournament. The Masters is about the golf, and it's about the Masters and past champions and the history on this course. And Phil Mickelson said it was delightful to play in those conditions where that's what it was all about. And he said this is what the major championship should be. The best players in the world, regardless of tour, getting together to play the major championships. And doesn't matter what tour you're on, the European Tour, the Asian Tour, the LIV Tour, whatever tour you participate in throughout the season, the best players from those tours get together and play in the majors. And from an idyllic perspective, yeah, that's the way it should go, I think. And no one's going to disagree with what Phil Mickelson had to say about that. It really wasn't the story. You had the one little remark from Jim Nantz at one point where I feel like he knew exactly what he was doing. He said, there goes Brooks Koepka on the CW. That means crosswalk, he said. And he kind of paused afterwards, taking a shot that, hey, here we are on CBS with the Masters. This guy plays LIV Tour on CW. But then he claimed that it was just short for the crosswalk, wherever he was going across at the time at the Masters. I found that part of it funny. But outside of that, we'll talk to Scott Stallings about it. He said it's no deal at all. Not even is it not a big deal. It's not discussed. They don't care. I got the sense that is reality other than the questions these guys are still going to get from the media. From a tour perspective and from a player perspective, I think the hard feelings have pretty much gone away with this thing.
Well, and, I mean, the other thing, just the perception, though, is that the guys that are the former Masters champions who are on the LIV Tour washed up. Koepka mentally drained. You've got Mickelson, who's reached an age where he's not going to compete, and then they both show up and do what they did.
Tied for second place.
But even if the storyline was the Masters coverage is not going to ignore the LIV golfers, they didn't allow them to, even if they wanted to, based on the way they played. And while we saw Jon Rahm come from behind and win against Koepka, who led through 3 rounds, we also saw Mickelson and Koepka play right there with the top stars. And, oh, by the way, the PGA Tour as an amateur on the up-and-coming that is a next star of the PGA Tour whenever he wants to get rolling. So I just thought the storylines fit the whole setting for what the tournament was. And, by the way, the fans also win, because when you start to look at this leaderboard, you're tuning in, and that's even without Tiger Woods playing a factor whatsoever, because he had to withdraw due to plantar fasciitis and couldn't walk based on the conditions. The conditions absolutely, for whatever we want to refer to as washed out. It's not the players, it was the course. Other than that, I thought everything worked itself out as it should, and there's really no controversy behind it.
Spieth shooting up the board on Sunday was great, a great development for the tournament and the interest. Phil Mickelson, remarkable. that he finished tied
65.
for second. I mean, yeah. And I did ask myself two big questions I had coming to this, because I'm at my parents' house watching with my dad, who watches every PGA event, not just the majors. He is sitting there all weekend watching every single event. And he was rooting for Jon Rahm over Brooks Koepka. And he said, because Jon Rahm, Koepka left, was sort of the way he said it. He wasn't mad about him taking the money. He just said, well, he left the tour, so I'm for Jon Rahm. Now, in every other instance, my dad would typically go cheer on the American. If it was versus a European or international player at a major, he'd go for the American. But that wasn't the case here. Doesn't hate Brooks Koepka, but likes the story of Jon Rahm, wanted to see him win more. And Rahm's a very likable guy, too. I'm sure plenty of Americans were rooting for Jon Rahm, and for reasons that had nothing to do with the LIV Tour or for Brooks Koepka. But I found that interesting, just coming from my dad, and curious how many other people kind of shared the same sentiment going down the Sunday backstretch of, I want Rahm to win because Brooks Koepka left and Rahm is still with the PGA Tour. I know it's not a factor with the players. I wonder if it's a factor with fans out there.
I think
the other thing that
the roars at Augusta for Mickelson when he finished at 18.
Yeah, Mickelson's beloved at that course too.
But you still had Spieth and Mickelson trying to match shot for shot too.
Yep, and I think Mickelson's a little bit of a different case because of that 04 win, because of the lack of the vertical when he celebrated, and that legendary picture of him jumping up for joy, finally winning his first major at that point in 04 was such a legendary moment. He's kind of in with the whole Augusta crowd with that. My other big thing was, I wonder what Brooks Koepka's honestly thinking walking off that course, because you could really go one of two ways here. Koepka was so open and honest in that Full Swing documentary on Netflix about his self-doubt and how he really doubted if he could ever play at a high level again. Well, here is proof he can go and win majors again. This is full proof. Now, the other side, if you want to be, negative Nelly about this, and you're Brooks Koepka, you're saying, I'm probably never going to get another opportunity like that again. I'm up 4 strokes going into the final round. I'm up 4 strokes on Sunday in Augusta at the Masters, and I didn't take it home. How am I ever going to be that close again? Brooks Koepka, being the competitor he is and the alpha that he is in majors, I think he's going to come out of this tournament saying to himself, I can still do this. I've got another couple major championships in me now. I've proven it to myself that I can go toe-to-toe with the best in the world, and I can give my chance at winning another major championship. I think that's probably what he's feeling, but I couldn't help but watch those last 2 or 3 holes, and I'm studying Brooks Koepka closely, thinking, what does that guy feel like tonight? Huge blown opportunity, and that's my last opportunity, or this is the start of me being back at major championships, and this is just the beginning of my next run.
I think, he was asked about being back, and if this shows that if able to comprehend that he can play, and he's like, well, I've known this for a while. I mean, I don't know what a while is for him, but he responded to the reporter in the presser that just said, this was right after the final round. He's like, I've known this. Maybe you guys haven't seen me play, but I know I can still compete at a high level. And he mentioned a few shots he would love to have back. But I think playing with Rahm also helped him and mentally it helped him. It didn't help him based on the results of the shot. But he goes, typically I am half a club longer than whatever Rahm's doing from the fairway. And he's like, there's one shot where Rahm went with a 9. He decided to go with the wedge, and Rahm was short on the green. The wedge went over the green. And he's like, that's just, I can't explain that based on what we've known about each other and how we play. They were also, they don't like slow play. The group in front of them was extremely slow.
Yeah, they were getting stopped. Cantlay and Victor Hovland were in front of them, and I noticed there were a few times where they were being very slow.
But so Koepka is the example of the champions on the LIV Tour that are still going to have a major presence in the majors, because he's going to find himself exempt on these moving forward. And, as a major champion, for instance, you're normally extended the invite to Augusta National. Well, that's how Norman would have received the invite. But Koepka's going to get that. The other players.
Well, he's going to get invited. And my big question is he going to put himself regularly in contention on Sunday? At major championships. Does he feel like this is the beginning of the reemergence of Brooks Koepka of being the alpha among alphas at the majors? Or is there something to playing on the LIV Tour where the stakes aren't as high in terms of competition?
Because both of that.
Is that going to lower your ability?
But on the tour itself, though, he was known for playing great during the majors and wasn't winning anything else anyway.
Oh, no, I get it.
But now mentally he seems back, but also he gets the best of both worlds. He got the massive signing bonus. He made $4 million, which is what, let's see, I think it was 3.3 that Rahm won as the champion. So he makes more. Now he wants the green jacket again. There's no doubt. Of course.
I mean, look, he's making a lot of money, but no one's going to know that he won.
I don't know how he doesn't take away the fact that he went toe to toe with the best. That the hottest players based on the 2023 season, Jon Rahm and Scheffler, and he went and led for 3 straight rounds.
Yeah.
When things came apart on day 4, but really started towards the end of round 3 when he had to restart that due to the weather.
Yeah, I mean, look, the first time I knew that he won the LIV Orlando Tour event was this morning when I saw it on the Outkick rundown about him making more money winning that than the Masters. So he's fine. He's making more money than he would ever dream to make, and he still gets to compete at the majors. My big takeaway, though, is are we seeing the start of Brooks Koepka 2.0 at the majors, or are we seeing a fleeting shooting star of a guy who's going to play on a lesser tour and then be in contention one more time at the majors? I tend to believe he's going to be back.
I think so.
And competing at a big level at the majors and raking in all the guaranteed money and the money of the LIV Tour.
But he and Phil are the example of why.
Jon Rahm, by the way, 28 years old. Did that surprise anyone else? Amazing how young that guy still is. Because he feels like he's been around for so long.
Yeah, you're right.
Because he was a young phenom, and he looks old. He's looked about 37 years old since he was 21. And he started out on the PGA Tour, and he's looked about the same age the whole time. So I was surprised when I saw how young he still is.
And, I mean, on the 40th anniversary of Seve's win.
Yeah. And on Easter Sunday, the 40th anniversary.
Yeah, and it was what would have been Seve's 65th or 66th birthday.
66, yeah.
He wins as the next Spaniard to do it. It was a great storyline overall, and we'll pick back up with that throughout today's show with the theme of Augusta, the weather, Tiger, and I mean we need to dive in as well to Sam Bennett and the fact that we've got a record purse where guys are raking in all this money and he didn't make a dime. He did, but not from where he finished.
I can also speak as a guy who has suffered from plantar fasciitis before. That Tiger Woods is talking about.
Man,
I've never had a leg completely reconstructed the way Tiger has, and he's got plantar fasciitis on top of that, on that surgically repaired leg. But this is a sports injury I can actually speak with some experience on.
Plus the wet conditions and the cold played a huge factor in all of it. We'll get into that. Plus Odell Beckham Jr., he has signed with the Ravens, and what that means for Lamar Jackson. We'll hit those storylines and more. Dan Dakich is next to pick up with us on Hot Mic.
What is your most controversial opinion?
I think girls with hairy armpits should be eradicated from the face of this earth.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
Hottest take is that In-N-Out is overrated.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Because their french fries taste like cardboard and they get soggy too quick if you get them animal style, and their burgers are just like always dry. So
It's gross.
Hot dog is not a sandwich
Why not?
because it's not 2 separate pieces of bread.
What's your hottest take?
Normalize blacking out.
ChatGPT is going to take over the world.
Hate Duke University. I hope they never win a game in the history of life. I hate everything about them. That's my take.
Why is that your hot take? Why do you feel so strongly about that?
air of arrogance amongst people I'm friends with, and I want to punch them in the face often.
I believe there shouldn't be any weight classes in fighting, UFC, boxing, just to let the best fighter fight.
I'm a Packers fan. I think it'd be great if Aaron Rodgers leaves. It'd be really funny if he demanded all this stuff from the Jets and then stayed.
LeBron James is not the go to basketball.
My hot take is that the University of Tennessee is hot trash, and so is the SEC. Go Big Ten.
I hate when people slow down when it's a green light and they think it's going to turn yellow, so they slow down anticipating that it's going to turn like red.
People do that?
Yeah, at least in Canada.
He's from Canada. I asked people from Canada for their hot takes. They don't have any. They don't have any.
I'm not a controversial person. To each their own, I guess.
Hot takes from Canada.
Snapchat is cringy. Do not ask for my Snapchat if you are over 18 years old.
I think a celebrity that got canceled and shouldn't have is Hayley Williams from Paramore, simply because she said a derogatory term in her song Misery Business from like 15 years ago. 15 years later, they decide she's a criminal? I don't know about that.
I think the Beatles are overrated.
I'm here in Nashville. My hot take is that country music sucks.
Taylor Swift is overrated.
Swift is better country, for sure.
Cowboy boots aren't cool.
We are far from the most racist country in the world. I'm so ready for the new president.
Here we go. Joe Biden is a terrible president. Trump 2024.
Hot mic now, and earlier today and every weekday morning, you can check out Don't At Me with Dan Dakich right here on the Outkick Network. We say hello to Dan Dakich as we broadcast at 6 and Peabody
Dan the
with
man.
Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Dan with us from Indy. Good to see you, man.
Hey, thanks for this morning. Thanks for coming on. Always a good time.
Love
Monday,
it.
it's beautiful here in Indy. It's almost Nashville-type weather here in Indy. Love it.
Could have used this weather at Augusta National. What were your big takeaways from the Masters tournament overall?
I thought it was pretty cool. Jon Rahm's best player in the world, at least the way I see it. I know Scotty Scheffler's terrific. I loved what Phil Mickelson did. The whole live thing is interesting. Great players leaving the tour. The tour hasn't been really affected by it. But, of course, the three guys that finished in the top four from the live tour haven't been affected by going to the live tour, at least in the Masters. So, Look, it's my favorite Sunday of the year, and I did not even mind the fact, because I was busy all day Saturday, I liked the fact that we had golf literally all day from 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning until nighttime. I thought it was great.
Hey, I thought they were going to have to postpone the finish based on Koepka and Rahm following Patrick Cantley's group around all day. You're not a fan of the slow play.
I play a lot of golf, and we have a rule. Play good, play fast, play bad, play faster. I mean, what are you doing? Like, I get. No, seriously, I get that it's the final of the Masters, last round, all that kind of stuff. But my God, that was like a death march for those two guys. And I do think, again, I'm not friends with any of these guys or their people or their parents or anything like that, but I think you could tell that Koepka was getting visibly frustrated. Maybe he was frustrated with his own play. Maybe he was frustrated with not being able to catch Rahm, make birdies. But you can see that he was frustrated. I don't blame him. I mean, man, that was brutal. And you know what? You would think pros, I know they're playing for a lot of money. I know they're last of the Cowboys, playing for their supper, all that kind of stuff. But God dang, Cantlay, let's pick it up a little bit.
How much do you watch body language with golfers? I find myself all the time watching reactions to shots. I try to guess right away if it was a good shot or not off the tee based on their body language right as they go through with the follow-through. And one guy specifically that I cannot stop watching is someone I love, but it's Jordan Spieth. If you remember that first meltdown when he was really young at the Masters, it was a big thing about his lack of maturity and how he's screaming towards his caddy and he's visibly getting frustrated. Dan, I still see a lot of that with him. I'm watching him a lot over the weekend. I'm like, this guy is talking to himself after every bad shot nonstop. How much do you watch things like that with golf?
Hey, I watch it in its entirety, and that's what I watch in every sport. And you're so right about Spieth. I don't know if you know the card game Euchre. Do you know that card game?
My parents love it.
All right, so I never heard of it. Then I went to college. Everybody played it, and what I learned very quickly was that after every hand of Euchre, everybody has to talk about what they did or what they should do, and that's kind of like golf. Like if you play golf, it's like, oh, man, I hit that one fat. Or everybody wants to explain. And usually on the tour, a guy will lean or get mad or whatever. But Spieth is at a different level. You're so right, man. He's like Mark the Bird Fidrich 1,000 years ago talking to the baseball. He's talking to the ball. He's talking. And he's about half crazy. And, he played great yesterday. I certainly did. But, whenever it gets lately, anyway, I shouldn't, he's been a great champion, all that kind of stuff. But I have a feeling when he's in contention late that he's always going to crap the bed. You know what I mean? And I wonder if all those thoughts going into his mind, now competing against so many guys that are as good as him that don't do that. Like Jon Rahm gets mad, but then he seems to let it go. Koepka looks like he's just an NFL fullback that's taking hits. He just gets up and keeps playing. Scheffler doesn't seem to be bothered. Those guys are at his level, and they have a little more even temperament. You got to do what you do, but I now think that Jordan Spieth, if he's in, let me put it this way, it didn't surprise me to see him bogey number 18 yesterday and put himself one below the leader in the clubhouse, which was Mickelson. I just assume he's going to do that when push comes to shove now.
Dan, I was once a huge NBA fan, and I never thought of all the possible issues with the NBA, that the biggest one facing the future of the sport and its popularity is a lack of desire to compete consistently at the highest level by owners, by players, and by coaches. I'm talking load management, and now I'm talking about whatever the hell happened with the Dallas Mavericks against the Chicago Bulls the other night. I don't understand how the reward is worth the risk of doing what Mark Cuban did in that game. What in the world is going on?
Let me ask you a question. What's the difference between that and point shaving? Like, seriously, what's the difference? People want to get on players. We've had point shaving scandal where guys have won games but maybe under the spread. But I mean, that's intentionally
they're just
trying
not
to
taking
lose a
money
game that
from
may have
gamblers.
put you in the playoffs.
The only difference is they're not taking money from a gambling agency or someone betting on the game.
Maybe, but I just went to Wrigley Field, and in right field outside is a big DraftKings sports book. So who's to say that they're not taking it in a different way? I look at it as I look at it as fixing the game. Why aren't you playing them? You're playing them because you want to lose for whatever the reason.
Well,
I don't understand that.
They're fixing the draft because they have a protected top 10 pick from the Porzingis trade, and by losing, if they made the playoffs, they can't necessarily guarantee they're going to have that pick. And now,
but they were still alive for the playoffs.
Right.
No, I know.
By making the playoffs, it lessens their chance of the protected pick, which is why they lost.
I know, and that puts it on a completely different level. That's what I was going to say. You're costing yourself now something. You're costing your fans now something. You know, a guy sits out in the middle of the season. That's a little different than 4 guys sitting out, and we don't want to go to the playoffs. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. We don't want to go to the playoffs. In what sport? We don't want to go to the NCAA tournament. We don't want to win this game. We don't want to go. We don't want to go to the NHL playoffs. We don't want to beat the Colts in the last game of the year and make the NFL playoffs. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, seriously, that is as egregious as anything that I have seen in the NBA. We've seen fights. We saw fights on the bench yesterday. We saw some idiot break his hand. We've seen Tim Donaghy and his shenanigans. We've seen all kind of stuff in professional sports. But think about it. I don't want to go to the playoff. I'm on the 18th hole, and if I make this putt from 3 feet, I'm going to the playoffs in the Masters. I don't want to make it. What sport would you not want to make the playoffs in? Honest to God, I could not. I thought when I originally saw it, fellas, I thought, okay, well, it's a meaningless last game of the year. And then I did a little research on it, and exactly what you're saying. They get a better draft pick. They blah, 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 blah. You're basically saying we don't want to go compete at the end of the year when the prize is the biggest. I'll be honest, there's a lot of things, and if Cuban was involved or if the general manager were involved, if I'm the league, I'm suspending somebody. I'm suspending the owner. Remember, this is 100 years ago, but when Charlie Finley of the Oakland A's made this big trade, Joe Rudy and all these guys, he cleaned out his team for money. Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner of the Major League Baseball, voided the trade, saying he's invoking the best interest in baseball clause as a commissioner. Well, if I'm Adam Silver, and he'll never do it because he's so gutless and on the player side and woke and all that crap, this is a best interest of the game issue to me. You're telling your fan, we don't want to go to the playoffs. We're going to sit out. We want to lose. I've never seen anything like it, and I hope I never see anything like it again.
Well, and so Kyrie Irving has been a bust there since his debut February 8th. They're 9-18. But he did have a 19-point fourth quarter that in a must-win game for the Mavs against the Kings that kept their playoff hopes alive. Then last Thursday happened, where the NBA refused to do anything about that awful situation where the officials told the Warriors that it was their ball, and they had already told the Mavs it was theirs, and Cuban protested that loss because that was a key factor in their overall playoff standings. Well, they set the players on Friday, and the ruling came out on Thursday. So I don't think that any of that is just coincidence.
No, of course not. And one of the things that the NBA, would you agree with this? One of the things that the NBA has fought, even before, I think, Tim Donaghy, certainly after, his credibility. I mean, of all the leagues, the one I hear, and tell me if you guys hear the same thing. Well, that's fixed. The referees are letting stars play, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And now Rudy Gobert is suspended for the first playoff game against who? LeBron. So, of course, when you have in your mind that there is a conspiracy and this league is set up for the Michael Jordans, the LeBron Jameses of the world, any little thing that happens, we're going to say that's not a coincidence, that's set up for this. And I don't know if we're right or not, but I know this, the NBA is the one league that has a huge credibility issue among its leadership, and including in that leadership now are coaches, general managers, owners for that, and always has been referees.
And Chad, we'll get back to this later, but this game, by the way, was a 3-point game. 115 to 112, where the Mavs missed their final 3 shots, and Doncic sat after
Yeah,
the first quarter. It's a crazy story.
It's a bigger conversation for another time because there's already people saying, well, what's the difference in that and a team that's, sitting their guys to get the first overall pick in the NFL draft the last week? Well, the difference is that team isn't playing for a playoff spot. They're completely removed from any chance. That's a big difference than being mathematically alive and then throwing a game, even if it's Mark Cuban trying to stick it to the league by throwing his own team out of the playoffs, which, again, crazy circumstance. And crazy circumstance in Minnesota, Dan, where you got the guy punching a wall, then you've got a teammate punching another player over the course of one game. How does Coach Dan Dakich handle this if you're in that huddle and you watch some yapping going back and forth followed by Rudy Gobert throwing a punch to the body of a teammate?
Well, what I would always do, and we had that once or twice, but never got to that, is I just stand up and start swearing. Sit your dumb,
Yeah.
I would just stand up, get in the middle of it, and tell each of them how full of crap, blah, 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 blah. And unfortunately, probably make it a bigger scene than what it is, but at least you don't have a punch thrown and you don't have your guy, Gobert, your shot blocker suspended for your playoff game. The whole thing is ridiculous because, let's be honest, Minnesota has stunk forever, and now they're in the damn playoffs. And they won the game yesterday.
They won the game.
It's actually been a good year by Minnesota standards. You can argue a great year by Timberwolves standards. But here at the end of it, we're going to have to sit out Gobert. We got a guy punching the wall, Jaden McDaniel, who everybody tells me is a good player. Hell, I don't know. He seems like just another guy in the NBA. But he's stupid enough to do that in a season where everything, at least by Minnesota standards, has been great. I'm telling you, you could paint a scenario to me that said whatever you wanted to say. Make up the wildest thing, and I would say, I believe that when it comes to the NBA. I swear to God I would. And I don't, whatever is in your mind is crazy. I would say, yeah, you're right. I agree. Yeah, I can see that because they're nuts. The AAU culture, you're fighting, you don't care, winning doesn't matter as much, getting that bag, all that kind of crap. Hell, how many different things, and the entitlement, how many different things now are we seeing about Jon Rahm that are starting to be confirmed? I mean, my God, the level of entitlement is insane. And in the NBA, it's easy because you know the stars, because you don't play with a helmet on, you don't play with a hat on, you see them every night and they're in their underwear. So you know who they are, and they're promoted as stars, and the entitlement is insane as well.
Well, and you have Greg Popovich asking the media if they're packing heat at the press conference.
Yeah, Popovich's from my hometown. He hadn't been back ever. He's into $5,000 dinners and all that. Look, Popovich has an opinion. I respect it. That's great. But he doesn't need to put labels on people. He doesn't need to, these guys want to go back to Jim Crow laws and stuff like that. How does he know? Does he know these people and what they want? One thing I would say about Popovich, again, if you got your opinion, God bless you. Who am I to say your opinion's any worse than mine? But to ask guys if they're packing heat at a thing and being overly dramatic like that, when I hear those kind of things, I don't know how you guys are, but when I hear those overly dramatic type things, that's when I kind of wave it off and go, all right, well, that's just another guy complaining.
Dan Dakich with us. Final thing, and I totally understand if you change this in the next couple of weeks with us. You're on the spot right now, and the Colts are going to draft a quarterback, and Will Levis is there. Is he the pick?
Oh, I hope not. I do. I'd rather see Hendon Hooker get picked, and I assume he's going to be there. I mean, I have a good friend. He's 35 years as a defensive coordinator in the NFL. He likes Levis enough, but he said he is so stiff that it's silly. And he also said about Anthony Richardson, he made a comment. He goes, a guy that generally in his 35 years, guys that play the way that they play on Saturday play the same way on Sunday. And so I think if you were going to tell me right now, the first three picks in the draft were any order you want, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, and C.J. Stroud, and the fourth pick was the Colts, and they're going to either have a chance to do one of three things, which is basically pick Levis, right, trade down, and get maybe the ninth pick or whatever, and maybe take a swing on Hendon Hooker, or take a defensive guy I would bet they take Levis. I think that's the scenario that they would take Levis. Otherwise, I think they're going to take either Richardson or Hendon Hooker, but I do reserve the right to change that because who the hell knows?
Well, and there are a lot of teams that are meeting with Levis this week. So I'm fascinated to see what happens with this because, the narrative is, well, we saw what happened on the field. But the other narrative is teams are quarterback needy, and 3 could go in the top 3 picks. And if you can get Levis, if you have him as a top 15 pick, but you pick 4th, maybe you got to ensure that you get your QB.
Dan, do you deduct points for the bathroom mirror selfie where he shows that he's all jacked up in the mirror by himself, shirtless?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I do. I do. I think that, he has a very punchable face. He has a punchable persona. And maybe that's just me being jealous.
Very much so.
I will tell you this, though. This is what I think, all right? Like, if you like the guy and you're the Colts, and this is where the Colts have always been chicken blank, at least under ballot. If you like the guy, and don't be getting crazy. Don't be, well, we're going to drop back because we think we can get him still at 9, that kind of thing.
You got to take him.
If I'm the Colts, and if I like a quarterback, just take your damn guy and live with the consequences. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Ballard wants to overthink this, and then they get into defensive mode when it doesn't work out. If you like them at 4, take the guy at 4, and do what your scouts and you are paid to do, which is evaluate, make your reports, make your decision, be strong in your conviction. So ultimately, that's what I hope happens.
Dan certainly does that each morning here on the Outkick Network with Don't At Me. Always enjoy the show, Dan. Thank you so much for joining ours, and we'll catch it tomorrow morning.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Yep, same. Dan Dakich with us each Monday to recap the weekend headlines. I do think Arizona's trading out at some point.
Yeah.
And the question is, how nervous are the Colts for that? If they're not nervous, I think they want Levis because I don't think he's going 3.
Dan's right, though. The big shock in all this is if the 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks we think are not the 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks. If there's someone on that list that has Hendon Hooker ahead of Will Levis, let's say.
And I think
that takes him.
Could certainly be the case.
I think
Top
it's a long
5,
shot. I think just like it's a long shot now that Hooker lasts throughout the first round, I think someone trades back into the first round or he goes late at worst. It would also be a long shot to me that someone drafts him ahead of Will Levis. I'd still think that.
Hit us up with your thoughts on social. You can follow us individually. You can also just check out the show on YouTube by subscribing to the Outkick channel. Coming up, Dusty May does more than just agree to return to Florida Atlantic. We'll dive in there. Plus, Caitlin Clark. She is big at the box office and then shuts it down for Iowa. That's next on Hot Mic. Recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker, wasn't
right next
it?
to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He's a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. He's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
you go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
Oh, definitely Madden. Madden, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins, and and I remember one of the younger ones was like, "Man, you're on Madden. You're really good." And I was like, "Cuz, like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah.
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American. I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already.
Yeah.
Been to the Super Bowl, won the MVP. He's like, now because of Madden, now you're cool. I was like, oh, okay.
You had done a few things.
Yeah. Now I'm good. Okay, all right. Well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when when I first started working in the morning news, shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about season. How you feeling? You know, you ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro. What do you think? I'm living under a rock? And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
Chad, I'm always skeptical when we get into these big contract extensions, the length of them, I'm saying.
Yeah.
Dusty May, Florida Atlantic announced not only did he agree to stay at Florida Atlantic, it's a 10-year contract extension that they announced over the weekend. So Final Four, first time in program history, obviously. This keeps them absolutely relevant. They're moving to the AAC, and he's had a record of 101-60. He's the all-time program leader in wins, and they finished with a record of 35-4 en route to that Final Four run. But do you buy into the 10-year extension? And this is on the heels of the story that after accepting the job and speaking to the team, he thought he was in over his head and nearly resigned and said, I've made a huge mistake.
I think that it's legit, and then it's a 10-year contract where he's making a lot more money. And I think it's legit that for FAU to fire him, they would owe him a ton of money,
right?
And that's been upped. I also think that it's legit that his buyout isn't much if he decided to leave. And I also believe that it's legit that his lawyer worked in there something about a certain number of programs, maybe mention them by name, he could leave to for little or no penalty, or certain conferences he could leave for little or no penalty. Now, if he leaves for SMU, let's say, or a non-Power 5 team anywhere, he's going to have to pay over a lot, or SMU will have to pay a lot to hire him. But I do think that this gives him more flexibility to leave on his own if he wants, while also ensuring more money, bigger buyout for himself. I think this is a pretty one-sided deal, is what I'm saying.
But it's
legit, but it's more one-sided for Dusty May.
But the 10-year aspect of it does mean to me that he's the coach for the next 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, he's certainly not leaving anytime soon. I believe that he's a man of his word. When I see all the headlines that May's remaining the head coach until 2033, 34, I'm thinking, let's start with just
if
4
he
years
wants,
from now.
If he wants, he can do that.
To, yeah.
What this does is, I believe that Dusty May is being honest when he says he loves it there. He don't mess with Happy, is what he said multiple times. He's not going to mess with Happy, and he's happy in Boca Raton.
And he's invested in the program.
I think all those things are true for
up.
sure. I also think that these contracts are one-sided for the coach. If he gets the offer of a lifetime 3 to 6 years from now and he wants to bolt, he'll do so with little or no penalty. And what he also signed into is an impossibility of FAU to fire him. This is a lifetime contract on there. I guarantee you the buyout is so rich for FAU, he could do almost nothing short of off-court controversy, short of Chris Beard level stuff, to where they're not going to be able to fire him because, and that's the way it should be. You got FAU to a Final Four. If that's not worthy of pretty much a lifetime contract, if you want to be there to be the basketball coach, I don't know what is.
And I think it's another example, and it's a big one, of what the conference change means for that program. They're averaging a very low attendance number throughout this entire season, despite posting 31 wins. And they're getting $500,000 across the board for the TV contract that Conference USA had. That was from the football contract. Now they're moving up to where they're going to get a couple million. And this is a basketball program where they were putting only a couple million as a university into it. Now they can devote so much more behind it, and they can look at the program for their hoops the same way that they were looking for it in regards to football, where they had Kiffin come down and win. Not to the Final Four, college football playoff level, but you certainly have landed some big football names, and now you keep the guy who became a name in the NCAA tournament. Same goes for Caitlin Clark at Iowa. So they averaged over 11,000 fans this past season. Season prior, they were averaging somewhere about 4,000 or 5,000, I believe. And
which isn't bad for the women's game at all.
It's not. But you can see the jump.
Yeah.
And then they could already see the success rate of what the season tickets were going to mean, but they were inundated so much that they had to put season ticket sales on pause for the upcoming season because of the unprecedented demand. And this is after they saw an average of 11,143 fans at their games this past season.
I hate to be nasty here. This is an Iowa problem. You have a set amount of tickets in your building. You don't pause selling season tickets until, you know when, Hutton? when you sold the last ticket in the last row of the building for a season ticket. This shows me that the infrastructure in Iowa athletics is subpar, that they don't have a mechanism in place to just sell out their season tickets and not pause it. The pause should be sold out season tickets
what they have,
and packed house for every Iowa women's game.
I think they were mainly concerned with how many tickets they have to set aside for visiting teams and then the students. Because you got to have this stuff figured out. They say that they have sold 13,200 season tickets. Capacity is a little over 15,000 for where they play.
You got to have it figured out. If Matty Ice was here, our resident Iowa fan, I would look him square in the eyes and say, this pause is a failure of your athletic department. And if I'm the AD at Iowa, I'm talking to whoever's running women's basketball tickets and saying, we don't pause until all of them are sold. There's no pause to redo the math. We sell out capacity if we have a chance to.
And now
that's
by
it.
Unpausing it, the ticket prices go up even more. Coming up, Odell Beckham Jr. gets paid. Will Lamar? That's next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, hour number 2 is here. Hutton and Withrow for Hot Mic across the Outkick network. Coming up in about 15 to 20 minutes, Scott Stallings, PGA Tour professional, tied for 26th at Augusta National this past weekend. He'll tell us about the course conditions, the rounds overall for him, and what he observed after he finished. And we had the big finish yesterday for Jon Rahm. That's straight ahead. Plus, Sam Bennett's week in Augusta and what he's doing today at the A&M Invitational. And a bit later, Jim Williams joins us, the media analyst and the Emmy Award-winning producer who was quoted in the article last week for CBS Sports in regards to the Pac-12's future and their TV contract that must be negotiated. And when it does happen, it's likely not going to feature a schedule where 50% of all games will be televised. That's coming up in hour number 3.
Can I peel the curtain back just briefly here
Yeah.
on this? So a week ago, we'll be reading and getting ready for the show and seeing what's going on. And I saw a tweet with a quote from Jim Williams, a media analyst. I'm thinking, this is a very interesting quote. And I look it up, and I was like, okay, this guy does media analysis for various leagues and all this other stuff. Be a good guest to have on to talk about Pac-12 media rights. So I just do a Google search, and I send Davey, our producer, a LinkedIn account to a Jim Williams who works in media. And Davey, without just saying anything initially, later that day I ask him, I say, so, how's it going with Jim Williams? And he says, well, you sent me the LinkedIn account of a different Jim Williams that works in media. So I had to get through that first, then eventually found the right Jim Williams, and now we're going to get that Jim Williams on. So I said, oh, I'm sorry.
Fantastic.
This guy also worked in media, so maybe he's just on the coattails of this Jim Williams.
I feel like that could be a very common name.
It's definitely a very common
Like
name,
John
but to
Smith.
find like Jim Williams at Mediascape whatever on LinkedIn and to look Jim Williams media consultant and have 2 different Jim Williams media consultants pop up, that's a little more unlikely.
I agreed. This one was quoted by Dennis Dodd. We'll dive into the details of the negotiations that are not happening right now.
Hutton's going through like, you mean there might be more than one Jim Williams? It's like Meet the Parents. You think the crazy folks at Samsonite maybe made more of one of this type of suitcase in a crazy scheme to try to turn a profit, that there could be more of the same thing?
Chad, you know where I stand on this. I initially was surprised to see what Baltimore gave Odell Beckham Jr. when they did, because based on the timing of where we are in the offseason and the money that they would have to dish out, and by the way, the other teams that were involved, I'm thinking, well, you just wait until after the draft, and then you have the opportunity to assess where you are in the offseason, and if you need another receiver, cool. If you need a number 1 receiver, he's still there. But what Baltimore did not have the luxury of was what Kansas City, which I thought made the most sense for him, with Patrick Mahomes, and what the Jets, who know they're going to get Aaron Rodgers at some point. They don't necessarily know in Baltimore who their quarterback's going to be. And this is a step towards helping to ensure that happens for Lamar Jackson. Of course, on social media, Odell Beckham Jr., he's showing the FaceTime with Lamar, and you can see the reaction from both. Tags him on his Instagram story. And while the price tag was steep, by Baltimore jumping in and giving him exactly what he was asking for, the Ravens said, hey, here's exactly what you need. We've met with you. We chatted at the owners' meetings. Let's get it done. It's an aggressive move for a team that wants their former MVP quarterback to return. They're still in conversations with Lamar Jackson. But here's the other thing to factor in. Another aggressive move would be to trade Lamar Jackson to move up and draft your future quarterback. And
that is a possibility I thought about.
And knowing that you have the luxury of an offensive coordinator there now that coached him in Cleveland with the Browns. And I'm speaking of Odell Beckham Jr. And knowing that when healthy, he is very productive, especially in impactful moments of games, playoff games. Chad, I still believe Baltimore doesn't necessarily know what Lamar's going to do, but they have given them the ability now to a number one receiver they've traded away when Jackson was there full time. And if he returns, they've ensured that he's got the number one receiver that he's been clamoring for to open up more of the offense.
I think the scenario that to me is most likely is that Baltimore knows there's not a great market for Lamar Jackson, which I think is kind of crazy. But I think they feel that way right now, that there's teams that just aren't willing to give up what they have to give up and pay Lamar Jackson what he wants. That's out there. So they feel like they're the best bidder right now. They're the best opportunity to land him. And they're confident in doing it because two sides of this. One, Baltimore should not make this move unless they're really confident, borderline 100% sure Lamar Jackson is going to be their quarterback. The other possible caveat to that is what Hutton just mentioned, if they want to trade up and get one of these top quarterbacks in the draft. And if you're Odell Beckham Jr., you don't sign with the Ravens if Tyler Huntley's throwing you passes. I wouldn't think so. I mean, it can't just be all about the money right now for Odell Beckham Jr. He's looking at teams where he feels like he can go and be productive and win a Super Bowl. You can do that in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson as quarterback. Maybe you can win big with the right rookie quarterback also. All due respect to Tyler Huntley, this team's not winning a Super Bowl with Tyler Huntley. And that just doesn't make much sense for Odell Beckham Jr. So I believe that the Ravens feel like there's not a huge market and that they can smooth things over with Lamar Jackson, make him feel welcome again, bring him back into the fold. And when you put the carrot out there of a star veteran wide receiver like Odell Beckham Jr., suddenly that makes the position Lamar's in Baltimore look a little bit more appetizing.
Yeah, yes. Here's the other thing that's key to remember, though. It's a one-year contract. So if it hits the fan around the trade deadline and you don't have Lamar and you have a rookie and things aren't looking great, you can trade him to a playoff contender knowing that the contract's going to expire at the end of the year anyway.
As a mercenary type
deal. You get something for him, Odell, I'm saying, and he goes to a playoff contender and still has the chance to put up numbers and play for a contender and then potentially sign an extension, which was what he was going to try to do in L.A. and then towards ACL in the Super Bowl, but not before he made an impact in that game. I think it's a very smart move, despite my ignorance on the timing of it, because the Chiefs have the luxury of waiting. The Jets were supposed to meet with him today, but they can also wait if they had to. I mean, they've added enough pieces and they have enough young talent around Aaron Rodgers to be just fine. And I do believe Rodgers is going there. They do too. And Baltimore has no assurance based on how things have gone in this whole offseason of Lamar Jackson saga and the fact that, doesn't have an agent, so they're relying on him to pick up the phone, but he's telling fans on social, hey, sorry, but got a bolt. I want to get paid. I think Baltimore made the right move because they've thrown the carrot out there, but even if he doesn't come back, they have a veteran wideout around a potential. If he doesn't come back, they're moving up high in the draft, right? Well, I'm thinking more along the lines of like a Indianapolis.
But
right?
Meanwhile, the money that Lamar Jackson wants went to a guy who's about to be deposed by a 25th woman.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy part about all this with the new story with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, he's set to give a deposition this week in a sexual misconduct lawsuit where he will do that. Let's see, it'll be the 25th sexual misconduct lawsuit filed against him.
He settled with 24
with
women.
the other massage therapists. And my guess is he goes into this and answers everything the exact same way. He's already served his suspension of 11 games, came back after that. And in this lawsuit, Watson's alleged to have attempted solicit sex acts, including intercourse with the plaintiff, and this all goes back to 2020, massage therapist. But this is the same storyline that we've heard. It's just coming from universal law group instead of what we saw down in Texas.
I'm willing to bet not much comes from this. It is interesting, the one piece of it where he is being, I guess, commanded to bring his phone and text information from his phone in this part of the deposition. I don't know necessarily what that means or if there's any new info that comes out of it. But my guess is we probably find out about what we did with everything else, which is not a lot. And it is interesting that this is the one woman plaintiff that has not settled at this point, where this is still going forward.
Well, and this one came forward October of last year, I believe, on top of what was already about to be settled. Had already been settled going into the season where he already had the suspension and he was serving that.
And until he's deposed, there's still a chance the thing does settle.
Sure, and it could settle after that too.
Yeah.
With the civil case there. Also, you've got Joe Douglas saying that, hey, Aaron Rodgers is going to be here. I'm certain of this. Are you?
Me too. Yeah.
I mean, it's just a matter of...
And for him to say it, he knows it's just little detail here or there that they have to clean up with the Packers to make it happen.
Even though I am sure that it's not easy when your quarterback isn't necessarily on your active roster currently, your offseason roster, and you're making moves around things. But the one team that's been given permission to work all this out are the Jets. Rodgers' camp has got to be telling them, hey, here's what we need. They've done that. They met with them. He claims that they just brought guys up and said, hey, what do you think about this guy or this guy? And, of course, he's glowing about his teammates in Green Bay, but there's no coincidence they go out and bring those guys in like Allen Lazard.
If there's some gulf between the two teams, then Douglas isn't saying this, even if it is at a fan event. They're very, very close to the point of it's just a matter of time. Douglas knows it. Gutekunst and the Packers know it.
Yeah.
It's going to get done. My guess is it gets done before the draft, and everyone gets what they want in the end. Maybe the Packers don't get everything they want from the Jets in this deal, but the Jets get their quarterback where they can make a run, and the Packers get rid of Aaron Rodgers, which, let's face it, they want to get rid of the headache. He would not return their text or calls before he went to the isolation retreat. They want to be done with the back and forth, and now Aaron Rodgers gets a new lease on life in Jersey with a Jets team that's set up from a roster standpoint to make a run at a Super Bowl based on the young talent on that team. So I'm here for the drama and the change of scenery for Rodgers. I think it's going to be an exciting season with him and the Jets.
What was it like playing through the conditions at Augusta National for the recent Masters tournament, the championship? Our next guest finished tied for 26th. Scott Stallings joins us next right here on Hot Mic.
Controversial opinion.
I think girls with hairy armpits should be eradicated from the face of this earth.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
Hottest take is that In-N-Out is overrated.
Yep. Absolutely. Because their french fries taste like cardboard and they get soggy too quick if you get them animal style, and their burgers are just like always dry. So, it's gross.
Hot dog is not a sandwich.
Why not?
Because it's not two separate pieces of bread.
What's your hottest take?
Normalize blacking out.
ChatGPT is going to take over the world.
Hate Duke University. I hope they never win a game in the history of life. I hate everything about them. That's my take.
Why is that your hot take? Why do you feel so strongly about that?
Air of arrogance amongst people I'm friends with, and I want to punch them in the face often.
I believe there shouldn't be any weight classes in fighting, UFC, boxing, just let the best fighter fight.
I'm a Packers fan. I think it'd be great if Aaron Rodgers leaves. It'd be really funny if he demanded all this stuff from the Jets and then stayed. LeBron James is not the go to basketball.
My hot take is that the University of Tennessee is hot trash, and so is the SEC. Go Big Ten.
I hate when people slow down when it's a green light and they think it's going to turn yellow, so they slow down anticipating that it's going to turn like red.
People do that?
Yeah, at least in Canada.
He's from Canada. I asked people from Canada for their hot takes. They don't have any. They don't have any.
I'm not a controversial person. To each their own, I guess.
Hot takes from Canada. Snapchat is cringy. Do not ask for my Snapchat if you are over 18 years old.
I think a celebrity that got canceled and shouldn't have is Hayley Williams from Paramore, simply because she said a derogatory term in her song Misery Business from like 15 years ago. 15 years later, they decide she's a criminal? I don't know about that.
I think the Beatles are overrated.
I'm here in Nashville. My hot take is that country music sucks.
Taylor Swift is overrated.
Swift is better country, for sure.
Cowboy boots aren't cool.
We are far from the most racist country in the world.
I'm so ready for the new president.
Here we go. Joe Biden is a terrible president. Trump 2024.
The strong play on the course continues for our next guest. Hot Mic rolls on with Hutton and Withrow, 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Scott Stallings finishes tied for 26th at the Masters and played very well on day 1, day 3 as well. And Scott, thank you for joining us on a day where it's an off day, the rare off day with the kids, and I know you're enjoying that too. But man, you got to be thrilled with overall, based on the conditions, how things played out for you.
Yeah, I mean it was a good week. A lot of strange turn of events with basically played in 4 seasons, but I don't think you get to the point of where I'm at and say that that's what the goal was. Obviously, you want to be there on Sunday afternoon and have and kind of feel what that's like. But basically, I came down to I had in the second round, I had a kind of rough 7-8 hole stretch where really struggled to kind of get the ball in the right position, especially around the greens with some wind. And, you get out of position there and start to have to try to fight back a little bit. And it's tough, but happy the way that, first of all, felt very fortunate to even make the cut. and then to get out there and take advantage of the opportunity I was given and move up the leaderboard, and give myself a chance to play 2 more days, and kind of celebrate the weekend. A bunch of family came down, and chance to spend it with my wife and my kids, and enjoy an off day today at Hilton Head. And we get ready for RBC this week.
I saw the big group photo too, which is awesome. And you know where I'm coming from on the. You got to feel great about it, because the start and stop. You mentioned the different climates. It was 80 degrees on Thursday, and it's cold on Saturday. What is that like to get going, play well, pause, get going again, and try to get back into that rhythm that you had already had?
A little bit of it. I mean, you do it this long. I mean, you're gonna do that. You're gonna deal with it and kind of know it comes with the territory. But I think there's a lot of things that people they don't realize how much the golf course changes, especially with the rain and temperature and everything. I had on Friday, I had 138 yards to a back pin on number 17, and Saturday from a tee box that from about 25 yards closer, I had 210 yards.
Wow.
And the wind was roughly the same direction, maybe just quartering just a little bit different, but just temperature and conditions and rain and everything. It was, to be honest, my caddies, I never in my life did I think we'd see numbers into some of these holes that we saw, just because of the wind direction and the rain and just everything that was. But Augusta National showed off yesterday afternoon. The weather cleared, the sun came out, and it was beautiful. Nice way to end on Easter Sunday.
Scott Stallings with us on Hot Mic across the Outkick network. Scott, did you after your final round, are you sticking around to see how things played out? Did you see the finish?
No, I was already down the road getting a speeding ticket on the way to Hilton Head. So yes, was the Augusta National card did pretty good in Augusta, Georgia, but as soon as we got outside the state lines, they were waiting for us.
Yeah, I'm thinking you can't pull the "Do you know who I am" card and say, I just played at Augusta National on Sunday at the Masters. Can you let me go here with a warning at this point?
No, the guy was asking, he's like, "You don't have any registration?" I was like, "No, it's a dealer tournament car," and that just raised a whole nother myriad of questions. And I still had the decal on that kind of let you in and out from the course, and I think they were trying to make sense of, first of all, the fact that I didn't steal this car, but my wife and my kids are in there. My family's making fun of me because I was going too fast, and some little country back roads, but. I did see the end. I saw that John won. I have no idea the ins and outs of how it all played out, but the round Phil Mickelson played 65 on the Sunday. Yeah, I mean it was definitely scoreable, but I mean there were some knife's edge pins where if you weren't right where you needed to be, you were going to struggle. And but I think that's the way they wanted to play. The course is very receptive, but penal if you got out of position. So the round he played was incredible with all the scrutiny and everything that he was dealing with. But hats off to John. Him and Adam have done an unbelievable job this year, and very deserving of number one in the world.
You mentioned some of the scrutiny for Phil Mickelson, but the galleries, the patrons were very loud for him on Sunday with that performance. How much does experience on that course play into that, Scott? When you watch a guy like Mickelson that's so familiar with that course over the years, won his first major in 2004 at the Masters, when you see a round like that on Sunday, how much does his experience play into his great play?
Well, I played with Vijay Singh the first 2 rounds, and he told me when they have to think about the number, it's a lot. And he said he thought that was his 30th Masters.
Wow.
And he said, "I think." So it was funny just to play with him and have a chance to, kind of pick his brain. And, he Vijay didn't hit it like he used to and this and that. But, barring 2, kind of, suspect holes in 36 being the fact that we played in a crazy amount of wind and some rain, and we got called off the course for 10 minutes and put right back on, and kind of some starting and stopping. He would have made the cut.
Yeah.
And it was crazy to see how he just kind of plodded his way around. And, experience is everything, especially around there, of knowing, where to be, where not to be. And when you're if you're in out of position early, how to get back into position as fast as you possibly can. And the only way you know that is to do it and experience it. One person can tell you, but none of us got to where we are in our careers by just like listening to someone else telling us what to do. We went out there, experienced it. It's like, whether it's right or wrong, players want to see it for themselves. And I know I've definitely been there as well. And there's a couple shots that I did this past weekend that if I was given the opportunity, I would have handled it a lot differently, and I'll be more prepared for it next time.
Scott, I'm amazed that Jon Rahm is only 28 years old, because I feel like we've known about him for so long, and he's got such a mature sense about him, not just the way he looks, but the way he sort of carries himself. How good is that guy to be 28 now, to get that second major, and to get his first Masters?
I think a lot with who he surrounds himself with. Adam Hayes is his caddy, and that guy has nothing but respect from players, caddies alike, and the way he handles himself, and kind of on and off the golf course, and helps his guy get prepared to play week in and week out, and kind of manage both life in and outside the ropes. Kind of goes a long way, and the crew of dudes that he has around that kind of helps him get better are great. Some of the best in the world at what they do. And Phil was right when Jon came out that Jon would be number one in the world at one point. It wasn't a matter of if, just a matter of when. And definitely a 5-tool guy, if you want to use that in the world of golf like they do in baseball. But there's not necessarily a flaw in there, and if you can find one, it is very small. And when he's at his best, like it's just like Rory, when Rory's at his best, he's very difficult to beat.
Yeah, I mean, he's rolling right now. Same for Scheffler, who was around that mark too throughout the early portion of this tournament. Scott, give us the best behind-the-scenes story that, a year or two from now, whenever you're doing these interviews, someone will ask you about, give us a story about Augusta. Does anything come to mind from this weekend?
The 12th tee box. That's the stuff that like people don't see. So the 12th tee, they had us teeing off from like one area in the practice round to kind of keep the grass, and because they back and forth between two tees that are side by side, but just on different levels. And we were the second group out on Thursday, and the back of the tee honestly looked like, by the end of the practice days, looked like you went down to McCabe at the driving range right down the road from y'all's studio, and that's what the back of this tee box looked like. Nothing against McCabe, but just very, very well used.
It's not Augusta.
There's no PGA Tour events going on in McCabe, for those that aren't familiar with McCabe.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
And we went and we came there the next day, and BJ walked up there and said, "This place is incredible." And I didn't know. It was beautiful. The weather was awesome on Thursday, and I didn't know what he was speaking about. He looked at, and they had completely resodded the entire back of the tee box overnight.
Wow. What did
it just like you'd
no, go ahead.
And
sorry.
you just like never you just never, like, that just doesn't happen anywhere else.
Were you
and
on
it
the
looks
course?
like it had been there for years.
Were you on the course when the trees fell?
No, I had just finished. That was a couple groups after me, but I had some friends and family that went back out to watch some of the groups behind, because that was when the start and the stop from when they thought we were getting pulled off and putting back on and all this and that, and they were out there when it happened. That is nuts. And I mean, that is right in front of the 17 tee box, and that's a huge blessing that no one was hurt and no one was in the way. But those trees are enormous. Anyone that's ever been there around the tee box, and you literally went there the very next day and had honestly never knew what had happened. But anyone knows of anything about Augusta, excuse me, if a tree falls on the property, they make these basically like homages to the tree that fell, the Eisenhower tree, all the ones kind of falling all over the property. And they make, furniture or bowls or all sorts of different things throughout, give it to members, as gifts or whatever. And they had a brand new bench built on the first tee, and I asked the member that was on the tee giving guys like scorecards, pin sheets, stuff like that, any way to guess if that came from the tree that fell down? He said, "I can't say yes, but I also can't say no."
Wow.
And he said, and it wouldn't surprise me. And it was literally the next day.
Wow. I hope my death is as honorable as that tree's death that we saw. That's incredible. So, Scott, every time I watch golf, if you watch enough, and obviously I've never been a PGA professional, but I learned something new. We talked about this last week, but just a caddy putting up the number 5 and saying 5 on a 5-iron on a shot is against the rules because caddies, they can talk to each other, but you can't give playing advice to another caddy or another player. What did you make of this? And honestly, I never knew that was a thing. I thought if you were buddies, you could talk in a round and, share some, not advice, but hey, this is what I'm shooting on this shot. But that's not the case?
Technically, yes, but that's one of those things that if you went to every par 3 and unfortunately, it's part of the game. And there's not a player in the locker room that thought anything of that. And, unfortunately of who it was and the situation it was and everything, just looking for an opportunity to bring and, sort of put Brooks in a bad light. But there's not a single guy on the tour or anyone that has anything bad against it. But him, Ricky, or Gary, or Butch, Gary's caddy, you're just kind of about the whole way. They're just completely blown out of proportion. And, the hardliners were probably, yes, penalized or whatever. But, at the end of the day, man, you still got to go out there and execute and kind of deal with it like everyone else. So as a player, I could completely care less about any of that.
Scott, one more quickly, if you don't mind, because we're going to dive into this as soon as we let you go. What do you think the week was like for Sam Bennett and the way he played as the amateur and was in contention on Sunday?
I actually had a opportunity to play with Sam. I know I talked with you guys last week, but I played with Sam Sunday afternoon and knew nothing about him other than the fact that, he was, seemed like he was, very confident in his abilities as far as the way he handled some of his interviews and everything at the USAM, and played with him. And he was nothing but the opposite. Asked a lot of questions, still very confident, but in a way of like, all right, you've done this a lot more than I have. I'm going to try to pick your brain for this 9 holes. And him and his caddy, his coach at Texas A&M, were great dudes and very complimentary of just the way they handle themselves on the golf course. And to put yourself in that situation, considering the conditions that they had to deal with and kind of managing that with playing with the players that they play with in the grouping, master champ, number 1 player in the world, and go out there and kind of, definitely hang in there, hold their own and put themselves in the last group on the 3rd round of the Masters is pretty impressive. So it's got a bright future ahead of him and, got a good head on his shoulders and, anything can happen, but it was pretty cool to see, how far he came in a big stage in a very short week and an opportunity that he had not been in before.
Hey, man, you've been great to us. This was great perspective earlier in the week, last week, and then, of course, today as you played and played very well at Augusta, and the road trip now moves from Augusta to Hilton Head, and you've got the family with. Tell the family we said thanks on the day where you've got the day off.
Well, I appreciate you guys very much, and y'all can have at it, and look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Yeah, man. It was great following you
Thanks,
last
Scott.
week. Yeah, thank you.
All right, see y'all.
Yeah, man. There's Scott Stallings, finished tied for 24th. Not bad.
Not bad at all. Being there on Sunday is good.
26th.
Yeah, being there on a Sunday, that's not a bad thing. How about that tree? Immediately turned into a bench.
That's incredible. Like that, the amount of stories that come out of this weekend. Adam Scott was telling the story about the Champions Dinner, where there's no assigned seats, but there are. Like he's got his special spot, and then
it's like the high school lunchroom.
He sits next to Trevor Immelman on his right, and then he's got Marco Mira on his left, and then Tiger sits next to him, and then next to Tiger is Jack. It's just crazy. And then all the stories that come out of that dinner and the details of what you learned about all the guys around there. I think that's
such an
awesome.
Exclusive little club that now Jon Rahm joins of those Masters champions getting together for the dinners and everything else. That would be, putting on the green jacket, winning it, having that moment on the 18th green. Oh. Fantastic. but being an annual member of the club until your dying day, as a former Masters champion, that is awesome.
So I want to clarify something real quick. So Davey and I discussed before the show one day last week, and I brought it up on the show. There was a player, he was the club champion at Augusta National, who was designated to be the fill-in, but he's only the fill-in, from what I read, if it's after the cut. So if you have an uneven amount of players, he fills in. There have been rounds where he has shot better than certain opponents, has actually had a best score on a hole for a given round and more, but he has now aged out. And I mean that like, that's what Augusta National told him. So there's now like they just had like a silhouette of a younger player. I don't know who it is at their course, a member-wise, but someone else has been designated to be that guy. How cool is that?
That's awesome. And I never had any clue that was the thing. Remember years ago, Hutton, we had on our show, there was a guy named Tom. I forget his last name. But he had to play in an NHL game for Chicago.
He was the emergency goalie.
The third goalie, but the third goalie, it's a venue thing, and you're the emergency goalie for each team. Tom Tysowski.
That's it, yeah.
Was his name. And he was the Nashville guy from the Northeast, and he played for Chicago here in Nashville against the Predators when both their goalies went down, and he made a bunch of saves. I want to say they won the game maybe also, but it was a huge story, and we had him on in studio and talked about it. I was fascinated because I didn't know it was a thing until this happened, that every venue supplies an emergency goalie that's just there in a suite ready to go get suited up if someone loses all their goalies in an NHL game, and it's some amateur guy that plays in a beer league the rest of the time. I mean, it's made for movies. This also being a fill-in.
It's cool.
Like a seat filler for the Oscars, but for the Masters.
Jeff Knox is his name.
I'd love to get that guy on the show.
Absolutely.
But I guarantee the Masters won't allow it.
I don't know. I mean, he's a part of the rule makers at Augusta.
That's true.
So can he do what he wants?
He just says, you know what? I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll join you.
We had the conversation earlier that it feels like Koepka, the major champion, is back, right? Even though he didn't win.
Major contender for sure.
What we saw is that the old Koepka is back. The way Sam Bennett handled the whole week, and just to know that he leaves Augusta with his coach who was his caddy. He does not have a swing coach. He was asked a couple of times this week about, does he ever feel like he'll get to that part of his game where he's like, no, I don't think I'll ever have a swing coach. Because people tell me I'm going to have back issues when I'm older. I'm so young, like, it's working. Well, it worked at Augusta, and then he arrives back in College Station. Great friend of the show from Texags, Billy Lucci, has the reaction as he's walking back in to the team facility there and to the standing ovation from off the tarmac. And he's got all the Aggies around him. He's returning, and he's participating today in the Aggie Invitational, where he's playing 36 holes, and he's not allowed to have a caddy. He has to carry his own bag. So he goes from finishing where he did yesterday, not able to take home any cut monetarily because of his amateur status, and then carries his own bag today for 36 holes. I love that story. I don't love the fact that he can't make money. We know the sponsorship dollars are going to pour in, but he can't make the winnings there. So
he can now make NIL sponsorship money all he wants, but not a direct pay for play.
Yeah,
as an amateur. It's an incredible story, and I couldn't help but watch the kid over the weekend and think, we're going to be seeing a lot more of him.
That's what I feel the same way.
We're going to see this guy. This feels like Tiger Woods. Not that he's going to be Tiger Woods, but Tiger Woods at Stanford playing in the Masters as an amateur. You know, playing in certain pro events, starting out. Not that level of hype, but I watch him play in his game and think, we haven't seen the last of young Sam Bennett.
Yeah, and Chad, you know, of course he's at A&M.
Yeah.
He's the NIL game is the strongest there.
Yeah, I don't know what it is for golf there, but I think he's going to be fine, both as a professional and
he's got sponsorships on his shirt.
Now,
so
if you remember, Hutton, we've had dinner at that course.
Oh,
That's
I know.
his home course.
Yeah.
That is the A&M Country Club, essentially, where we were the night before the A&M Alabama game. And as I'm watching him, I'm thinking, I think I threw football to a little kid on the 18th tee box on that course when we're walking around the grounds one time.
Because they had built
where
a
Sam
football
Bennett
field.
now marches around.
So
yeah, they had the mini football field next to the course.
So the second place finisher. So here's the rule. Had Sam Bennett won the Masters, he would get the green jacket, but the second place finisher would have received the winner's purse based on the rules set.
So in this case, it would have been Brooks Koepka and Phil Mickelson splitting $3.4 million.
No, it would have been, just to
In a
say,
tie.
had it not, and
Yeah, they
also
tied for
included Jon
second.
Rahm. No. I'm saying if Bennett won the tournament, and when Rahm wasn't there,
Jon Rahm.
it would have been Rahm number 2.
Right.
And he would have had the winner's
what I'm
purse
saying
anyway.
is, if Bennett was Rahm and won the tournament in this setting, and there was no Rahm, there's a second place tie that would have split the winner's purse.
Yes.
In that instance.
Yes. Just a remarkable story. And remember the name. We won't soon forget it there. It wasn't just a flash in the pan on Thursday like we thought. It's consistent. And with all of the craziness on the course. And he's doing it with his golf coach at A&M as well.
Saturday was miserable looking.
Man. Yeah.
Freezing cold, pouring rain.
Yeah, I want to dive into the conditions on
So
Saturday
bad.
later in the show. We'll do that coming up. But when we return, the alternate broadcast, the big hit for Manningcast in the NFL. Where are we going to see it flourish next? And are we already seeing it right now in Major League Baseball? That's next on Hot Mic.
I've always been a very fond of Rob Manfred. I got to know Rob very closely during the labor negotiations when I was a player rep for the 10 years of my career. Always respected him. Always thought he loved the game. Some of the stuff that's happened in the last couple of years makes me question that. But again, I know the guy, so I think he's trying to come from a good place, even if he makes decisions I don't agree with. However, if you're curious as to the financial state of the game, when the manager, the commissioner, or the owner of a company says something in the media that just kind of pisses all over the quality of the product, you know that they're in a financially good place. Rob Manfred talking about analytics, and he's not wrong in a couple of senses this way. So he was asked about it, and he's talking about it on record, saying analytics is an arms race to nowhere. Claims that the marginal value of investing in analytics has never been lower, and he's making that claim. Franchises are pouring resources into something which has little return on investment, little ROI, and that is actively damaging the game. Manfred said, and he's right with this comment, once everybody's doing it, that little margin that maybe you're getting, I'm sure that whatever that margin was at one point in time, whatever it is today, it sure as heck is not worth the damage that was done to the game over a period of time. Okay. So I'm probably going to get bleeped here in the next couple seconds. But this, to me, is a politician complaining on Twitter. And my response is, you're the commissioner. Why are you complaining about your game? You're in charge. Shut up and do something. Why, as a politician, are you on Twitter complaining about the things I'm complaining about? I voted you in to fix it. Don't complain to me. Fix it or shut the hell up. Okay, I'm done. I was doing analytics. And you'll laugh at this, Bill, but in 1997, I thought I came up with this new stat. I said, batting average is really irrelevant. When a guy's hitting 302 and his on-base percentage is 302, I mean, wow, that's not good. But I thought, you know what? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. Those two combined might be a cool number. So I had OB percentage. This in my notebook, it was OB percentage plus SLG percentage equals, like, I had it like danger factor or something. I ranked hitters that way. And unfortunately, I didn't copyright that because it became OPS. but analytics are, I think they're essential to succeed to a degree. I think they're an excuse for other people, and I think they're a reason that other people are great. I think you look at Gwynn, you look at all the great players of my era, they were doing analytics. They were just doing it a different way. Maddox was probably, he understood. And I think like I did, I didn't care what your average was. What I cared was your on-base percentage, your first pitch swing percentage, what your strikeout to walk ratio was. What did you hit with runners in scoring position? What was your swing percentage with 2 strikes? And then as I got older and I developed a sample set by facing the same guy 25 times, those numbers would come to fruition. They would be, and I learned that my sabermetric data versus hitters was different than the rest of the league.
Hot Mic rolls on. Manningcast is a huge success for Monday nights on ESPN. And now, seeing the numbers from last week's numbers from the K-Rod alternate broadcast in Major League Baseball with Michael K. and A-Rod, you've got great numbers through Richard Deitch here. Phillies Rangers, 1.3 million viewers on Sunday Night Baseball. And then you have the alternate broadcast on ESPN2 averaging 245,000. So that's nearly 16% of the overall average audience, which he points out is very high for the alternate broadcast on ESPN2. And Chad, MLB Network did a version of this, and they've done it once or twice, where they have Smoltz in, and they have just guys in studio just watching a game, and they're just chatting, right? But I think this is perfect for baseball.
Yes.
Based on the pace of play and the conversations that you can have out. And you can do this in the booth, too, in the main broadcast, which is also important. But the opportunities that allow you to just put players in a room and do this, I think we should see more of this.
Yeah, you're right about sport specific. Baseball is the amount of breathing the game does.
Yeah.
With foul balls and everything else, perfect for, let's have a conversation. over the course of all of this, right? Golf is similar, but I think golf is kind of that anyways, just with the main broadcast of a discussion, and then it's so much silence, you want to let it breathe more where you're not talking. So I don't know that it's perfect for an alternate broadcast. But it does not surprise me that a celebrity to the level of A-Rod would have this percentage of viewers for Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN, on the alt broadcast. It also, to me, is a very good endorsement to just put A-Rod on the main broadcast, maybe. Could you add viewers to baseball if he's just on the main broadcast? Or are you thinking, well, there are people that are just going to tune in just for him on the alternate broadcast, so you do it that way? This was also Sunday Night Baseball number 1, week number 1 of the season. Last night's game, I watched some between the Braves and Padres. It was a blowout quickly, and I couldn't find the alternate broadcast. On ESPN2, they had something different last night because I was making a point to go watch some of that. I don't know if they did it last night. I don't think it's an every week thing.
Okay. So it'll be the baseball version. And Manningcast is not an every week thing either.
No.
So maybe it's similar to that. I also wonder, like, can you get the player that's cool with practically everybody, and then you pull in different guests throughout? So, like, can you have Griffey on? Can you have Randy Johnson on? Greg Maddux? The Rivera? Just keep. It doesn't have to be pitching specific, but I mean, can you have those types of conversations while Ohtani's at the plate?
Absolutely.
And who's that perfect former player to host it? It might be Smoltz.
Well, I think A-Rod can do it. They had, he is a little bit different with his relationship with everyone. But I'm trying to think, when I was watching the Phillies-Rangers alternate cast, they had a former Yankees teammate of him that played a bunch of different places. And they would go in between pitches, and much like the Manning cast would do, they would show footage of him hitting. They were showing his stance.
Yeah.
And he was explaining how his stance was like Trey Turner's or someone with the Phillies. I forget the specific example, but it was interesting to do the breakdown of that. Much like the Manning cast has the ability to show footage of Lil Wayne doing something, right, in between if he's the guest, or Tracy Morgan, that they can show. Now, baseball, will it bring in the level of celebrity to join A-Rod? Doubt it, the way the Manning brothers can bring in celebrities for theirs. But, yeah, I mean, former players that are big-time names, I think, would want to do this.
I would think so. Also, like, ESPN's had success with the Manning cast. Will they branch this over into their contract with the SEC? Because there's another possibility there.
Yeah.
Just from SEC-specific conference games. And you can have your main host, and then you have special guests throughout the conference based on whatever the nostalgia may be for that specific rivalry that week, the storyline from the previous week. You can tie everything in.
I think the secret sauce, though, is chemistry. And the Manning brothers are so good, even on a slight delay when they're not in the same room.
Yeah.
They're in their individual homes doing it. They time it out well together. They have such a good rapport that it works. Michael Kay and A-Rod have the same thing. They're in the same room. They're right there on sofas next to each other, chatting about the game. So they're there. It's easier to have that chemistry one-on-one in the same room. Hutton, what I would love to see with this idea, SEC or any college football big game, you get a really good media celebrity for one team and the other one. But if they don't know each other going in, I think you're going to get a big variance of what's good and what's not. Because some of these guys are going to be really good together, and be able to play off of each other. Others are just going to be awkward.
Well, it's got to fit the conference.
Yeah.
So Marty Smith comes to mind. I think he would be the great setup man to pair him with another, not just another, just a legend that can carry Tebow. It could be a number of different, but I'm trying to find people that they already employ. And then from there, you have, the country music fan base across the Southeastern Conference. It seems like practically everyone's a fan of the Georgia Bulldogs now. But again, like, you can tie in different entertainment, music, of course, NFL stars that are on their bye week or something. Like, it still gives you the same vibe, and I think can have the same type of success especially considering ESPN and Disney, and they're all in with the SEC contract moving forward. They own it.
I think that what Omaha Productions did, Peyton Manning's production company, in conjunction with ESPN, is such a high bar to set to start this thing off that everyone's going to try to reach it. These numbers are encouraging with Michael Kay and A-Rod on theirs. So now it's let's find the right fit that has good chemistry, that's fun, that will attract good guests to join them during the alternate broadcast.
For sure.
If you can do that, you can mix all that together and you can have some big-time successes.
Chad, Jon Rahm wins the Masters.
He's a big-time success.
Yeah.
And he's big.
Wins the green jacket.
In general.
And a number for what it costs to produce that jacket versus how we view it. I was surprised to learn this over the weekend. Plus, we dive into the headlines of the Mavs in jeopardy of losing their first-round pick, so they lost. That's next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll 'em, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, the bold taste of a Southern legend.
Glad you're with us, and just like that, the final hour is here for Hot Mic on this Monday edition on the Outkick Network. 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. We hope you subscribe to the channel, Outkick channel on YouTube. Coming up in about 20 minutes, Jim Williams will join us, media analyst and consultant. And Dennis Dodd consulted with him for an article last week at CBS about the Pac-12 and the upcoming rights agreement and whether or not they're going to get anywhere close to what they need in order to continue being the Pac-12 as we know it. He'll be with us coming up in 20 minutes. Jon Rahm is the Masters champion, his first green jacket, and he was consistent, the most consistent throughout the 4 days, despite Koepka leading by 2 strokes going into the final round after leading by 4 when he woke up Sunday morning, but had to finish the 3rd round first. The weather played a huge factor. And Saturday, man, I feel awful for Tiger. You can just, he's trying to get through it, and you just knew based on the limp. That's the worst limp we've seen from him in the pouring rain. And the cold and the wet conditions and everything in between. He tried, after making the cut, tried to give it a go, but you knew he wasn't going to be able to give it a go.
Plantar fasciitis was the official reason that Tiger tweeted out, posted as to why he had to withdraw. And if anyone saw that video of him limping around on the course, you'll know that he was in bad pain. I've had plantar fasciitis. It feels like your foot is broken. I mean, you cannot put pressure on your feet without incredible pain. I had it because I was an adult playing in a men's league basketball league twice a week, and it was a lot of impact on my feet, and also running a half marathon. Those are the 2 times I've had it. And then I get done, I couldn't walk for a week after doing it. Tiger Woods had his leg rebuilt, and this is what's happening now with him. So not putting myself in the same category as to what he's going through, but if that's what it is, that is something that only goes away with rest. You just have to stay off your feet as best you can for as long as you can. Eventually, the soreness goes away, and you're fine again. So hopefully that happens for him in time for the next major that he's going to try to compete in. But, yeah, it was painful to watch him limp around that course. And watching Saturday in general, my big takeaway was, man, the Masters, as great as it is, part of the allure of the Masters is it's almost always great weather. I feel like that's an event
for the most part
that is always blessed with good weather. They've had bad weather there before. I'm not saying it's 100% all the time, but one of the reasons you like the Masters is it is this rite of spring where you're watching the tournament and great golf, and you're also watching the views. You're watching the azaleas. You're watching that golden hour you get last night with Jon Rahm walking off the 18th green every year. That camera, that static camera shot that follows them as they walk off and they hug their family and they keep going and the sun setting in the distance, it is beautiful. And then you juxtapose that shot and the scenery of that with the day before where it looked like they were playing around some goat hole in the British Open somewhere in Scotland on Saturday. Completely different feeling watching a Masters that is rain-soaked, windy, and cold, as opposed to watching what we saw on Sunday, which is the Masters. And the Masters means good sunny weather and great views all over that course, not what we got on Saturday. It really took away from it for me, which is crazy because I don't complain about that at all when I watch the British Open. I watch that in part because of bad weather conditions, because that's sort of a part of the event.
Yeah, because you're watching the Masters in part because of the course itself.
Yeah.
And in regards to the weather, on Saturday, I was surprised most with how the number of players that chose not to wear the rain gear. And they just got soaked. And then they wait on the umbrella. But they, as they're just drenched.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, if I did that, I'd have a cold for a week and a half starting today. And these guys are just, nonchalant.
Well, also,
I know they're used to it, but at the same time, it's cold and rainy, and normally you're either not playing through it.
But also, isn't a big part of being a pro golfer getting free gear? Yeah, I would want to wear everything, every type of accessory I'm provided that's free. I'm going to use any chance to break that out. If you've got rain gear from your sponsor that you never wear, like I'm putting that thing on.
Tiger did, but like
if it's a sprinkle, Hutton, I'm going to get my rain gear just to try something new on.
Well, the guys I was watching, they were atop the leaderboard, like Spieth. Like he would have his caddy hold on the green. Spieth had the caddy was holding an umbrella over the ball to keep it from getting wet, and Spieth would do his normal pre-putt routine in this driving rain, and then address the ball. They'd move the umbrella, and he would try to putt before it got too wet, I guess. And I guess the guys at the top of the leaderboard, Chad, don't want to mess with their swing and whatever else they got on, and instead of opting for, like Tiger is decked out with he's wearing a toboggan and all this other stuff too. But like I just didn't. I thought the guys at the leaderboard. I'm like, man, this has to be just pure misery. And they also are probably thinking, surely they're going to suspend play at some point in the near future, and I'll go in and readdress this, or maybe I'll just change up and come back out and not have to worry about wearing the heavy rain gear. I don't know.
Well, looking at the picture of Spieth, he does have rain gear on. He's got the rain pants over his normal pants at least.
Yeah, he's not wearing the
jacket.
jacket.
Not soaked through there. He does have the normal pullover. Again, maybe it's cumbersome for these guys and they're so into their routine. They don't want to put any extra gear on if they feel like it inhibits their swing at all. So that's probably a big part of it. And yeah, I saw Tiger and there was another older player on the course. They look like alpine skiers out there.
Yeah, so did Adam Scott.
They had every possible piece of gear on and accessory they could, short of wearing mittens around the course because it was cold. So again, this is me, normal dude, that if I've got a sponsorship with sports gear in any way, and part of the attraction of golf is you get to the pro level and your sponsor just throws stuff at you, I'm wearing everything I can, especially the bad weather gear you never get to wear. Hardly ever, unless it's a day like that at the Masters.
Chad, Jon Rahm wins the green jacket. The green jacket that was most recently up for auction was Horton Smith's green jacket from the inaugural 1934 Masters. It sold for $682,229 about a decade ago. Auction company at the time said it's the richest piece of memorabilia for the wealthiest owner. And sure enough, it was the most anyone's paid for golf memorabilia, according to the auction company.
Jeff Bezos bought it?
Don't know. Maybe Augusta bought it back. But I was stunned at this. You know how much that jacket cost to produce?
It looks cheap as hell.
$250.
Yeah.
$250. And for the longest time, I thought you sit your fittings in and they would have a jacket for anyone that could possibly win it. They just guess. And then they have, like, when I say guess, they'll have like 3 or 4 options for said player, and they'll make sure those are on hand. And that's just one that you hang on to briefly, and then they'll either produce it for you, or you can go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to have my custom tailor do it. And, some choose to do that. So I found it interesting that it's $250, but yet it's iconic.
Well, and
it's up there with the trophies that cost a ton of money to produce.
Jon Rahm can go to any tailor in Europe, where he's from, and get a $5,000 garment made for himself, right? Yep. And he's probably done that. He probably has something in his closet that costs a ridiculous amount of money. And here you have something very simple. I thought about it with Augusta. They're not going to an Italian tailor, right? I feel like they're doing it locally with someone they've known for a while. And I look at that jacket, and I said it doesn't surprise me it's not that expensive, because it doesn't look that expensive, which is, I think, part of the attraction to it. I don't know, at least with me. But then I also flip that, and I think about the fact that a tree fell. Mm-hmm. And within a day, they have whittled that tree into a bench they put on the first hole, according to Scott Stallings.
The tee box there, yeah.
Yeah. Single piece of wood in a shipping yard in Nantucket.
They would not confirm nor deny that it was the same tree that produced that bench.
Crazy,
but brand new.
But a cheaply made jacket.
Yeah, or
so it can be either or.
They'll send the raw materials to your said tailor, like Nick Faldo chose with his to always have Nordstrom.
It's part of the beauty of that tournament that you can get a pimento cheese sandwich for $1.50, and they can whittle a tree that falls into a bench overnight
and resod
on
the
the
tee
same
box
course
on 12.
and resod the tee box, and they can make a not that expensive sports coat for the champion.
Chad, Dwayne Haskins, a year ago yesterday, his family died. His family's still seeking answers about what happened. And trying to get those answers, they filed a civil lawsuit. And there are allegations in this civil lawsuit from his family. And it's coming from attorney Rick Elsley. It says Haskins may have been part of a blackmail conspiracy the night before his death, where it's believed that, here's the quote, targeted and drugged as part of a blackmail and robbery conspiracy. What occurred in the hours before Dwayne was killed, many questions remain unanswered. And a family member believes that as part of this theory, and why they would point to at least one reason, because Haskins was wearing a highly expensive watch that was stolen from him shortly before his death. So they're pointing to that as one of the reasons why.
Yeah, I'm going to need more evidence than that.
2 separate blood samples. He was legally able to. He was legally impaired.
Yeah.
There were
illegally.
Well, 2 separate blood samples were taken from Haskins. His blood alcohol level was more than the 0.20 in each sample. So, I mean, 0.24 is 3 times the legal limit for driving. And in 2 of the samples, it was 0.20. Legal drugs were also found in his system, and it was a accidental death is what it was ruled. But the family is saying there's more to this based on what happened the night before. And all of this took place in Florida. And this is where he pulled over on the side, then attempted to cross.
He attempted to cross a highway
interstate, and then he's got this truck going faster than the speed limit, killed him. But I mean,
if this is some scheme that's going on in South Florida, that there's proof that this is something that happens a lot, maybe. It's hard to go off a lawsuit on one side and just say that this is what happened. Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely? I have no idea if that's the case or not. You'll have to tell me more about where he was, where his watch was stolen.
Right.
All of those things, who he was with exactly that night. There was a woman with him.
Yep, in the passenger
Was
seat.
the woman part of a known part of other schemes that were going on? If that's the case and she's connected at all to any criminal element that was doing this, then that makes the odds very likely this was some sort of scheme to get him out of his money.
I haven't heard much of this since it happened a year ago. And now it's the first resurfacing of this that we've noticed for sure, and the family's doing that through the civil lawsuit. Chad, the craziness of the NBA. Rudy Gobert gets into it with his teammate, takes a swing. He's told to hit the showers and head home for the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're in the thick of it for
last regular season game.
Right, and they also, they lose their best defender because he picked up his second foul in the early first quarter, then punches a wall as he's going back to the locker room.
This was a different player, by the way.
Yeah, different player.
2 punches thrown,
so
one
Kyle
at an
Anderson,
inanimate object, one at a player.
In this still photo, Gobert's taking a swing at Kyle Anderson on the bench. Then just prior to that, Jaden McDaniels fractured his hand because he punched a wall because he was so angry and upset at himself for picking up those 2 fouls. Craziest. And here's the craziest part. They won the game without both of those players.
And if you want to go, Dan Dakich brought it up, but, conspiracy theory on this. Well, now he's suspended and they're playing the Lakers in the play-in tournament. Minnesota is.
But the winner advances and the loser also advances, don't they? They figure out
is this
who's
the
going
one
to
where
play where.
They go different directions?
The winner plays the loser of the other one or something.
It's an example of how the play-in tournament hasn't quite taken hold of America's consciousness, I feel like, because of the rules of it. Be a professional.
Yeah.
These things will happen occasionally. You can't have it happen it's not having anything happen to you. You committed this twice over the course of a game, a single game, where a player breaks his hand punching a wall like a moron, and then another player takes a swing at a teammate, and then Rudy Gobert apologizes, but also drops in there. Doesn't matter what he said to me. I got to behave better, or whatever he says in the apology. I mean, come on.
And he's getting a one-game suspension. He's not going to travel with the
team.
This is so dumb. Yeah. Also dumb is acting like the connection with the Mavs, not getting that. They were trying to get the game overturned where the refs screwed it up, and Mark Cuban was protesting the result of a 2-point win by the Warriors for a free bucket that they claim, and Cuban's been very outspoken on it, that they were not told. They were told that it was Dallas possession. So they came out and went to the other end of the floor, and meanwhile the Warriors were told, hey, it's Golden State basketball, and they just inbound it for a free layup.
Yeah.
It's very rare you see something happen that fast, and it was a 2-point victory for the Warriors.
Yeah, now, granted, this wasn't like the last play of the game. This was third quarter, but it did end up being a 2-point difference.
Right, and a free 2 points instead of the result being what it was, which is a loss. They were losing a lot of games with Kyrie on the floor, Dakich as well, and now they've got a situation where they have a protected top 10 pick, and because of the trade with New York and Porzingis, by not making the postseason, it makes the likelihood of their protected top 10 pick more. It gives them a better chance to actually have that. And there were some results that played a factor on Thursday as well, but the ruling came down from the NBA that said, no, we're not going to overturn or do anything based on the protest from Dallas owner Mark Cuban. And then Friday, they elect to sit many of their the best players, and including you got Dakich, who played a quarter and maybe just the very beginning of the second quarter before he sat, and then come to find out it's the final score is 115-112. So it's not like it was a complete blowout.
They still had a chance.
They're still in it. So as the NBA is going to investigate this, the question is yeah, they did this to lose, but they
almost won.
Nearly won. It's so stupid. But they did miss. I want to see the 3 shots that they missed. They apparently had 3 shots at the basket to tie the game late in the fourth, and they missed all 3.
This whole story makes me mad, and I'll say why. Does tanking happen in sports? Yes. But typically tanking happens when you are out of any playoff contention, and your season is over. And it's the NFL where you know you're going to get the number 1 pick, not a lottery system like the NBA, not where you still mathematically are alive for a playoff spot like the Dallas Mavericks. And I look at sports, especially pro sports, like the Hippocratic Oath, if you're a doctor, do no harm. That has got to be number 1 in sports, the integrity of the game. And what I mean by do no harm in sports, it's the understanding that every participant is doing their best to win. I sound like I'm a little league coach right now, trying to get a bunch of kids to go out and play hard and do their best. But you have to do that now in the NBA, because that's not what happens. Load management, good players sitting regularly now, not doing your best. And what happened with Dallas in this situation? A team with a mathematical chance to playoff spot, sitting their best players, trying to lose, not doing their best. You lose the public's trust when you are doing harm to your own sport, and suddenly the whole idea that, hey, this is pro sports, we're here to win, and we're trying our best to win. Even if we don't have a great team, we go into every competition as it's a competition, and we want to win the games. That's not happening in the NBA. And this is a huge problem facing the league. And it's not going anywhere because too many people in the league love the setup right now because they can go give 75% of themselves and make about 175,000% of what they should make in terms of salaries.
And they still were up 13 at half and only lost by 3.
It makes me so mad.
Nuts. Coming up, the Pac-12, what they're losing in the TV rights agreement moving forward. Jim Williams is going to join us. host of Stream On, quoted last week in an article from Dennis Dodd. We'll dive deeper. What is likely going to happen? What is likely not going to happen with the Pac-12 rights agreement? And what it means for the future of the conference monetarily. That's all straight ahead on Hot Mic.
Controversial opinion.
I think girls with hairy armpits should be eradicated from the face of this earth.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
Hottest take is that In-N-Out is overrated.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because their french fries taste like cardboard and they get soggy too quick if you get them animal style, and their burgers are just like always dry. So it's gross.
Hot dog is not a sandwich.
Why not?
Because it's not two separate pieces of bread.
What's your hottest take?
Normalize blacking out.
ChatGPT is going to take over the world.
Hate Duke University. I hope they never win a game in the history of life. I hate everything about them. That's my take.
Why is that your hot take? Why do you feel so strongly about that?
Air of arrogance amongst people I'm friends with, and I want to punch them in the face often.
I believe there shouldn't be any weight classes in fighting, UFC, boxing, just to let the best fighter fight.
I'm a Packers fan. I think it'd be great if Aaron Rodgers leaves. It'd be really funny if he demanded all this stuff from the Jets and then stayed. LeBron James is not the go to basketball.
My hot take is that the University of Tennessee is hot trash, and so is the SEC. Go Big Ten.
I hate when people slow down when it's a green light and they think it's going to turn yellow. So they slow down anticipating that it's going to turn like red.
People do that?
Yeah, at least in Canada.
He's from Canada. I asked people from Canada for their hot takes. They don't have any. They don't have any.
I'm not a controversial person. To each their own, I guess.
Hot takes from Canada.
Snapchat is cringy. Do not ask for my Snapchat if you are over 18 years old.
I think a celebrity that got canceled and shouldn't have is Hayley Williams from Paramore, simply because she said a derogatory term in her song Misery Business from like 15 years ago. 15 years later, they decide she's a criminal? I don't know about that.
I think the Beatles are overrated.
I'm here in Nashville. My hot take is that country music sucks.
Taylor Swift is overrated.
Swift is better country, for sure.
Cowboy boots aren't cool.
We are far from the most racist country in the world.
I'm so ready for the new president.
Here we go. Joe Biden is a terrible president. Trump 2024.
Hot Mic rolls on across the Outkick network. College sports landscape, the haves and the have-nots. It's been that way. The Pac-12, are they about to join the have-nots? Jim Williams joins us, media consultant, host of Stream On, and a 7-time Emmy-winning producer. Jim, thank you so much for the time. We enjoyed the piece from Dennis Dodd last week and wanted to reach out to dive a bit further. How dire is the situation for the Pac-12 versus what was perceived to be something that would be on par with the Big 12 when it came to the media rights agreement and the future of where we're going to find their games?
Well, first of all, let me say that I love Nashville, and it's good to be with you guys.
Thank you.
Enjoy the show. This is a series of self-inflicted wounds, okay? I'm talking about the Pac-12. The Pac-12 has a media contract that goes through they got 15 more months on this media deal. So what they did, and I can't quite understand why, but it's up to them, is that they got kind of over their skis on this. And they allowed some of their presidents to come out and speak, and they're going, oh, this is imminent. And so what happened is Mark went out and got his deal done. Now that was an extension, remember? So he didn't have to start from scratch. He took the 31.7 million per school. Now, what does that do? That put a marker down in the a marker down that's the PAC supposedly would have to meet. Well, I think because they have a deal, they have been working with Apple and working with Amazon, that streaming-wise, they probably could easily hit that mark, come close to it, but the linear side was their problem. And so now they're talking to the CW and seeing what they can do there. So right now, the PAC is trying to work out a situation where they can get linear and streaming together and make everybody happy. Whether they can do that or not, I don't know. But I can tell you this from years of involvement. They're not involved now. I'm talking about ESPN, Fox, and others. Don't be surprised if you see them again. It is a possibility. Right now, the Pac-12 is losing the PR war, and they're getting pummeled. So I don't know. Maybe what happens here is that there's a rush, and I'm talking about rush meaning presidents are pushing, George Kliakoff to get a deal done. Whoever you get the deal done with, just get it done. And on the other side, you got people who are willing to wait. So you're right now in that situation.
Jim, if ESPN, Fox, NBC, CBS aren't heavily involved with your conference, and you're one of the Power 5 conferences, is there a scenario right now where you could stay relevant by going to Apple Prime, even if it was a property owned by an NBC, like a Peacock or another streamer? Can you stay relevant just given the streaming, or is the linear part of this such a big part that you can't do that both financially and with what you need to be in the greater entertainment landscape?
It's a good question. Philosophically, I would say you could. Okay. You guys are down there in Nashville, that the MLS just did a deal which was 100%. They had 15 games on Fox, which was a deal that was brokered between Apple and the league. And I personally believe you could, but there are people who are creatures of habit, right? We all have creatures of habit. There are people who think that you can't survive if you're not on ESPN. That you absolutely have to be there. I'm not one of those people. I believe if you're a fan of sports, you'll find the sport. How does it hurt? It hurts because if you're not on a quote unquote name brand, then you're not there. I wrote an article a week ago 2 weeks ago now. I do a Forbes column, and it was basically about, Apple and, if you look at the Pac-12 guys, 70,000 of their graduates work in, the industry out there between the Valley and out to Washington. So they're, they're the people who birthed this entire movement, the streaming video movement, and that whole situation out there. So it's kind of hard to say on one side for the president saying, yeah, our guys are heavily involved in the actual creation of Apple TV and Amazon, and we are, we're very proud. But oh, by the way, we got an AD in Arizona who's upset that they may not be on TV and may not be relevant. So, they're taking the money from the guys in research and development. And now, and as I say, their presidents have been out there going, wow, we've done everything to be heavily involved in this industry, but, either we don't believe in it enough to do it. So somebody, look, if it were me, I'd take the deal and try to cut a deal with, Fox or perhaps, CBS and say, look, let's go and do like they did with the MLS, do 15 games, and let's just go. And we're going to be the first ones out there, and either we're going to be proven right or we're going to be proven wrong, but we're going to be having a deal and get this off the plate now.
I know George Kliavkoff has a television background. He's with MGM most recently before being Pac-12 commissioner. Jim, are you surprised that more conferences don't go immediately to a television executive when hiring a commissioner of their conference? If the biggest revenue source is TV, do you think we're going to see more leagues run by TV people?
It would have been my first hire. I would have hired somebody. I would have hired Mike Oresco, who's the commissioner of the American Conference. Mike is the guy who created, we just watched, and you guys did a nice show. We're at the Garden, right? You were in New York.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was a fantastic show, by the way. The thing, Mike is the guy who created and came up with the idea of CBS and Turner going in together. He was an executive at CBS at the time. So nobody knows, college sports better than Mike Oresco. So to your point, yeah, I'd go and get me a programming guy from one of the networks and say, okay, your job, you know what to do, you know what the market is, you know where the bodies are buried. One of the things that probably is holding things up right now is that Apple, Amazon, and of course, if it's CW at the moment, they're not in that space. They've dealt with, professional sports. Professional sports is done, in a whole different way than college sports is. I mean, you've got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 rights. I mean, you've got to explain all that. Who does the production? How does that work? So it's all new to these companies. It's not new to ESPN. It's not new to Fox, or CBS or NBC. But to the companies that PAC is dealing with right now, it's all new.
Jim Williams with us, the host of Stream On. So ESPN Plus, I haven't heard you mention them. Right. They've got plenty of space to make room for the Pac-12 games if they wanted to. If I'm another streamer and I know that ESPN Plus doesn't want the product, would that make me apprehensive to acquire it based on the number that the Pac-12 is trying to meet, which is around the same number that the Big 12 received?
I wouldn't be so sure that ESPN Plus wouldn't be interested.
Okay.
What I would say is that ESPN may, and again, these are all conversations. They don't have to be deals, right? You and I, the three of us can have a conversation about something that we know we want, but we don't have a deal made. But we can talk around it to the point where it's a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, right? We know what we want, but we haven't put it on paper yet. Let's say that ESPN said, look, tell you what we can do. And we're just spitballing here, right?
Yeah.
And sitting around the table, and that's what they do in these kind of deals. They say, look, we'll give you 3 games on ESPN. We'll give you 1 game a week, which is their 10:30 game, which they love, Pac-12 After Dark. And we'll put everything else on ESPN Plus. So we'll stream you on ESPN Plus, but we'll promote you in 1 or 2 games that we'll give you on the big network, on the mothership. Maybe that was a plan that was put in there. So we don't know. We don't know that. I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't know that they turned ESPN Plus down, and we don't know that ESPN Plus didn't wasn't heavily involved in the first deal that they didn't.
Yeah, and I want to, from your perspective, what's the value of the CW if they can get 50% or more, let's say, of the linear television product versus getting 3 or 4 games a week on ESPN or one of their stations, and then one of their channels, I should say, and then the rest is on ESPN Plus, knowing that SportsCenter and ESPN is going to promote that because it's a part of their and under their umbrella. How would you weigh the 2 options? Because it seems like, and you're just reading the piece from last week, it seems like the 50% linear is very difficult for them to reach, but it seems like a number or at least a percentage they're going to try to do.
Well, the only way you can do 50%, and I mentioned it to Dennis, was that you have to go to a place like the CW or Ion TV. I mean, it's the only way you're going to get it. You don't have to be a programmer. You guys have a TV guy, right?
Right. Yeah.
You can check, and say, okay, what's on Saturday on, because I had seen where NBC was quote unquote, interested in. I'm thinking, okay, fine. How are you gonna? And again, you guys are in Nashville, right? How do you knock off on USA NASCAR, which is in the fall, all the way through the fall, on the USA Network and NBC? It's the Xfinity series, which Comcast is Xfinity, so you're going to knock off that? That makes no sense. It's not going to happen. NBC's, got when they don't have Notre Dame games, they could probably sneak something in from that, but then they've just sunk a ton of money into the Big Ten. So again, as you go and knocking things off, right, you're sitting there going, well, what can I take off, or what could they do? Meaning CBS, NBC, and the usual partners. Can they put games on? Sure, they can put games on, but can they get 50%? No, there's just no way that works. CW, is a legit network. It's on 100% of the country. It's on DirecTV. It's on Dish Network. So from that standpoint, a lot of people used to make fun of Fox because of what they had on. And at the end of the day, Fox right now proved that they know what they're doing. So, if I were George Kliavkoff, in a perfect world, I'd have NBC, CBS, ESPN, Fox, everybody sitting at the table. And that's not the hand that we've been dealt, my friends. If you got CW and Apple and Amazon, you try to make it work. And that's where they are right now. Is that where they'll end up? Who knows? I've done enough of these deals to know that I wouldn't be surprised if we saw ESPN and Fox back in this deal. But stay tuned. That is not the situation as it is now.
Yeah, and I mean, on top of that, and we'll certainly have you back on for this, but who knows when, but if we'll see programs leave, for a different conference, and then that changes the whole, cyclical negotiation.
Next
based
time we
on
have you on, Jim,
availability.
it's going to be all hypothetical conference merger / teams leaving.
The other thing too, guys, and you were mentioning this just prior to my coming on, and that was the NBA. Okay.
Yep.
NBA's a huge contract company. So there are people who are going to want to spend on that. There's the college football playoff coming up, right? That's another big contract. NBC is breathing, in a bag from a standpoint of hyperventilating because Notre Dame, that deal's coming up, okay? And Notre Dame's talking about $75 million. You've got Bally's, which just went out, for all intents and purposes, is in bankruptcy. You got so we're at an inflection point. We may not see more money in college, spent in college. I mean, the deal that the Big Ten got, that might be the best deal in the SEC deal with ESPN. Those might be the deals that we'll never see again. We don't know. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on out there. And I think that to bring this full circle back to Mike Abresto for a second, what we just saw in March Madness where networks work together for consolidation, I think that's where we're headed. I think that way you can afford it. You need cost. It's like all of us. We have a budget, right? You want cost effectiveness and you want to know what it's going to cost you on a monthly basis. Everybody has a budget. So I think that's where we're headed. We're not there yet. And I think streaming will be a very big part of it. But for right now, because we're headed toward that direct to consumer anyway. And we will see how long it takes to get there. But guys, it's been fun. And I hope I haven't overstayed my welcome.
No, absolutely not. And in fact, we hope to have you back on again because this story will evolve for sure, and that affects.
No, this is fascinating,
major
Doug, so we'll definitely
football.
have more to talk about. Thank you so much, Jim.
It's a pleasure, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Check out Stream On with Jim Williams there, and we'll certainly have him on again. And also consider this: the merger between UFC and WWE through Endeavor. WWE has their TV rights deal coming up soon, and UFC is partnered with ESPN and ESPN Plus. So that could also play a factor in what, if you're thinking about what you're investing in and where the value is. The value right now is with that product because they own all of it, Endeavor.
Hutton, when we come back, there's one thing with the Pac-12 I think we'll both agree is very valuable to a network. There's one other idea I want to pitch, and you tell me if you think it's valuable at all.
I can't wait. That's next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Chad, as we wrap up, let's hear your thoughts on the Pac-12 and a potential of different networks rising together.
Well, it's not necessarily that, but it could be.
Okay.
So let's agree. I think we both agree that late night window is valuable to someone.
Yes.
If you could cherry pick the Pac-12 game of the week and put it at 7 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern on Saturday night, that's valuable to a CBS, a Fox, an ESPN, someone to package just that game of the week every week. Late night, Pac-12 after dark, right?
Well, valuable to a certain extent because their local affiliates make the majority of their local money off of the newscasts.
I'm not saying for all of
the
Pac-12.
10 o'clock Eastern would be difficult for CBS.
Maybe for CBS, but one of those networks. It could be on FS1 also. You know, it could be on ESPN, obviously.
Right.
It could be
or
on CBS Sports.
Yeah.
But that's valuable. Would breakfast with the Pac-12 be valuable? 9 a.m. Pacific, kicking off, 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern. The main competition in that window is big noon kickoff on Fox with the Big Ten. If you look around college football, there's not a lot of desirable heavy hitter games that are put on at 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern. If you had the first or second Pac-12 game of the week and could convince the league to kick off at 9 a.m., breakfast with the Pac-12 in those games, Pacific time,
Yeah.
But 11 a.m., would that package be valuable to someone other than Fox who has a big premier game every week at that time?
Well, what I don't know, you're saying the major network. The answer to me initially is yes. What I don't know is what does their Big Ten deal at CBS, because I think that's the one we're focused on right now, because Fox is going to have a game already. NBC has their game. They have Notre Dame, but then they also have the Saturday night game in prime time for the Big Ten.
Now they have a Big Ten night game, yep.
So it's CBS, really, that has the capability of doing this.
Or it's NBC making a deal with Notre Dame where they never play before 2:30.
Yeah, but what I
Right.
don't know, though, are the contracts for, like, Notre Dame pregame show. They're paying $75 million for it, so I don't know what that value is.
They probably
to get
won't
a game
mess with a
on.
day at all.
But then you have, but also, like, what's the Big Ten's agreement with this a la carte, where the networks are running everything, but the networks are paying a premium price for the Big Ten versus what's going to be pennies on the dollar for the Pac-12. So what I guess what I'm asking is, what's the value of having a game that could bleed over into whatever you're actually paying money for? You see what I'm saying?
And that's where you just have to find the perfect spot that has something right now that's inferior to those two products that I just mentioned. Pac-12 after dark, Pac-12 breakfast, basically, for them locally.
Or do you want to create a different spot for that other than Saturday? If you're going to be a part of the agreement.
Friday night is valuable to someone.
Your own window. Yeah.
It'd be late Friday afternoon Pacific time, but a Friday evening game to go head-to-head with whatever's on Fox, whatever's on ESPN, who will both have Friday night programming also with college football.
Yeah, I mean, I would try to get creative with it, but, man, it is difficult to see where.
They pitched this idea a while back, and the school said no. We're not playing at 9 a.m. For home environment, for fans, for everything else, we're not doing it for TV. But I have to think if that's what it takes to push it over the edge, get that Boulder going downhill. And I'm not talking about Boulder, Colorado, but Boulder, Colorado will be a big part of this next Pac-12 TV deal with Deion Sanders.
Well,
if that's what it takes.
Unless Colorado's going to the Big 12, which is a big topic for us tomorrow. So here, like, but what's the value for the Pac-12 to do it if you're not going to get all of your games as a part of this package? It sounds like it's going to be more of a Manning cast than it is. When I say that, I mean like it's sprinkled throughout the football calendar, much like we saw the CBS doubleheader or anything with that regard on a weekly basis.
Well, it's going to be a la carte either way. So there's no scenario now where the Pac-12 just goes to two networks and say, let's split it up and you air all of our games. They're not going to do that. They're not going to get good money for it. I'm trying to look at what they could get good money for to combine with what they're going to get really bad money for just to push it out somewhere. Whatever networks they go on their third, fourth, fifth, sixth game of the week, that's going to be out there somewhere that they're not going to get a ton of money for it. And it's going to be a mix of streaming and linear. But I am looking for a way to get top dollar for two games. The two games of the week, late night and early. And if you can get one or two networks to split that up, then the pennies you're going to get for everything else may be worth it.
But here
or at least somewhat sustainable for the life of a TV contract.
So what you have to do, though, is pimp out you wouldn't what would have been USC and UCLA, but you're pimping out
Washington, Oregon late at night.
And the top games in the Pac-12 are going to be those games. So if you're going to have the best game of the week in those slots.
And Colorado now, too.
In Colorado. But the worst teams are always going to be in the premium spots based on when the coaches want to kick off.
Well,
right?
would Deion Sanders agree to play at 10 a.m. Mountain Time locally to get on national TV on a network most weeks? If that was their premier game, 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern, I think so. And America's going to want to watch Deion Sanders in Colorado. Just give it a thought. George Kliavkoff, if you're listening.
You're also competing against Michigan and Ohio State.
Credit Hot Mike if you run with this idea.
Back at it tomorrow on Hot Mike across the Outkick Network.